Very good morning. It's Monday, the 22nd of November. It's 6 o'clock. These are the stories that matter to you and to us on the Great British Breakfast with Simon McCoy and Rosie Wright.
Now, there's growing rage across Europe as COVID-19 restrictions are tightened again. Well, our Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, is playing down the threat of fresh restrictions here at home. Are you worried, though, we could be next? You can email us, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Christmas parade horror. Some people have been killed, many injured after a car crashes into a Christmas parade in a city in Milwaukee. We'll bring you the latest on the investigation.
Final goodbyes. Mourners today will pay their respects to the MP Sir David Amess at a funeral service in his Southend West constituency. He was stabbed to death at a constituency surgery last month. There's going to be another service of remembrance in Westminster tomorrow.
Fulfilling her duties as a great-grandmother, the Queen attends a rare double christening at Windsor after nearly a month's absence from public duties amid concerns over her health.
Zinedine Zidane is reportedly out of the race to become Manchester United's next manager. Why the French superstar turned down the job.
And a top head teacher is warning that labelling students woke could lead to them giving up on campaigns. We'll explain why.
A very good morning. Let's start by taking a look at some of the front pages today, and the Metro up first. The Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has been criticised for not wearing a face mask on a crowded train. Now, that's just a day after apologising for not wearing one during a hospital visit.
Boris Johnson's been warned that he can't take the support of his MPs for granted as he faces a backbench rebellion over plans to scale back the social care cap. That's on the front page of The Guardian this morning.
The Daily Telegraph leads with growing rage across Europe as COVID-19 restrictions are tightened again. There's been a weekend worth of demonstrations.
The Daily Mail reports on the reason why child murderer Colin Pitchfork was recalled to prison. He allegedly approached teenage women in the street in a string of incidents.
Let's look at the Mirror. They're investigating fur farms in Finland. That's a bit of a tongue twister. Fur farms in Finland, where animals are being used to make fashion items for shoppers here in the UK.
MPs may be avoiding big tax bills on what they earn from second jobs. That's the report in The Times this morning. And
The Eye has a report on the push to make COVID-19 vaccination boosters available to all of those aged over 18.
The Health Secretary has said the UK is on track to avoid a Christmas lockdown. That's on the front page of the Daily Express.
And the Daily Star leads with some conflicting weather forecasts for the winter. Polar opposites, so they say.
A story you would know very well if you watched us last week, because it's something we covered on Thursday. But anyway, they're only a few days behind us. You're watching the Great British Breakfast. Good morning to you. Now, violence continued across Europe for a third day in a row as protesters fight back against new COVID restrictions. In Brussels, riot police were forced to use water cannon and tear gas against demonstrators opposed to the introduction of COVID passes and plans for mandatory vaccines.
Well, meanwhile, in the Netherlands, a 3-week partial lockdown was imposed after a record spike in COVID cases. Riots broke out in Rotterdam on Saturday, where police fired gunshots. On Sunday, fireworks and rocks were hurled at police in The Hague. Finally, tens of thousands of people protested in Austria's capital, Vienna, after the government there announced a new national lockdown and had plans to make jabs compulsory in February of next year.
Well, let's talk about that and other headlines of the day. Jason Reid is UK lead at Young Voices, his political commentator, and Jason joins us this morning. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Jason, we don't have to look very far to see the anger in Europe over the reaction there to the spread of COVID. Do you think there's a risk that we could be next?
There is a risk, but we've been assured over the weekend by Professor Sir Andrew Pollard, who's director of the Oxford Vaccine Group, that we are perhaps unlikely to see the same spike in this country that other countries, like you mentioned, Belgium and the Netherlands and others across Europe have seen, because earlier on in the pandemic, the UK's COVID cases were higher than a lot of those countries, and we have a stronger immunity as a population to the Delta variant, which in particular is causing these spikes and leading these governments to implement all these new restrictions. So the situation is optimistic at the moment, going by the scientific advice. At the same time, there is always a risk. At the press conference last week, Boris Johnson was talking about a blizzard of COVID, talking about it almost like a weather front coming across Europe towards us, and Sajid Javid making clear that more restrictions are not off the table if they're necessary in the coming weeks.
When you mention those restrictions, what would those be?
Well, the restrictions that we've seen across Europe, which if there's a similar spike in this country, is likely to be implemented here as well. You mentioned there was a 3-week partial lockdown in the Netherlands, tighter restrictions on face masks. We've already seen controversy over the decision to mandate vaccines for those working as health workers and carers. So similar restrictions along those lines. Possibly, I think it's likely we would see restrictions on big crowds at sporting events and concerts and things like that. So those kind of gentle introductory lockdown measures that we saw earlier this year and last year to try and see off any spike.
Now, looking at what's happening here in the UK, Sajid Javid was on the telly yesterday. There are a record 6 million people on the NHS waiting list for treatment. That's going to be a story that just gets bigger and bigger, isn't it?
Exactly right. And even Sajid himself says that the waiting list will only get worse before it gets better. The NHS is under unprecedented demand. Of course, we're heading into winter when demand is always going to be tough for the NHS anyway, combined with the potential for an increase in COVID cases, combined with the huge backlog, which currently stands at about 6 million cases. Chris Hopson, the chief executive of NHS providers, is very concerned about this. He says that even when case numbers are low, even when it's only a small proportion of hospital beds that are taken up with people who are suffering with COVID, it still has a significant effect in winter because some other beds are out of action, because you have to protect against COVID infection, so you can't use beds in the normal way. And so it can be a significant proportion of the beds in hospitals that are unavailable at a time in winter when the NHS is often very, very close to capacity anyway. And so even if COVID cases do remain relatively low, we might still see a situation where the NHS gets very close to being overwhelmed over the next few weeks and months.
Yeah, let's just talk briefly, if we can, about social care, because there's this new social care cap, the sort of maximum price any individual could have to pay for their social care. Lots of charities have said this really is going to hit poorer people the hardest. What do you make of the government's sort of latest version of how they're going to handle social care?
Well, social care is one of those issues that just never seems to go away, and there isn't an easy answer to it. This new plan for an £86,000 lifetime cap on contributions to social care will be debated today by MPs. Because of the government's significant parliamentary majority, it seems likely that it will pass, but there is a lot of discontent, especially on the Tory backbenches around this, which of course the opposition, the Labour Party, are very keen to exploit. They're trying to encourage Tory MPs to vote with them against the proposal. It seems likely it will pass, but at the same time, it also isn't out of the question that there might be a U-turn further down the line if this kind of rumbling discontent continues, because as you say, there is a lot of concern from charities and all kinds of welfare groups that this will hit poorer people the hardest. People with modest assets, as Labour puts it, especially pensioners, are going to be hit hardest by this new plan to tackle the immense cost of funding social care.
And of course, those Tory backbenchers are the ones who snatch seats from Labour, who are hearing from their constituents about levelling up. And here we have something that would appear to do the opposite.
Exactly. Yeah, Boris Johnson has made levelling up Britain the plank of his premiership, and so he's very keen to be seen to be doing things for people in the North and the Midlands who lent their votes to the Conservative Party in 2019 for the first time in a generation. And so the Red Wall MPs, the new MPs elected in 2019 in those constituencies, are very concerned indeed that this is going to hit their constituents disproportionately hard. And so quite understandably, they have concerns around that, and they're not terribly comfortable with this plan as it stands.
Well, it's great to see you, Jason. Thank you very much for your time this morning. We'll see you again soon. Jason Reed.
It's coming up to 10 minutes past 6. Let's give you an overview of what else is going on today. And in America, multiple people have died. More than 20 people have been injured after a car crashed into a Christmas parade in a city in Milwaukee. The city's police chief confirmed there were some fatalities and that dozens of people have been left injured. In a press briefing, he told journalists that a person of interest is in custody.
Mourners will pay their respects to MP Sir David Amess at a funeral service and procession in his Southend West constituency today. He was stabbed to death while holding a constituency surgery at Belfair's Methodist Church in Leigh-on-Sea last month. Sir David was a devout Catholic. His friend and colleague Mark Francois will deliver a eulogy today at a private ecumenical service at St Mary's Church in Prittlewell. Tomorrow, a Requiem Mass will be held at Westminster Cathedral in London, where a message from the Pope will be shared.
The double child killer, Colin Pitchfork, was recalled to jail after he reportedly approached teenage women in the street in a string of incidents. And this is according to the Daily Mail. The 61-year-old appeared to be trying to establish a connection with them. The revelations have sparked calls for urgent reforms to the parole board, which controversially released Pitchfork. Despite warnings, he remained a danger to the public. He was jailed for life after raping and strangling 15-year-olds Linda Mann and Dawn Ashworth in Leicestershire in 1983 and 1986. He was released in September.
The taxi driver who survived the Liverpool terror attack says it's a miracle that he's alive. David Perry described the bombing outside Liverpool Women's Hospital as an evil act and said he's thankful no one else was injured. He and his wife Rachel also thanked the public for their amazing generosity following the blast on Remembrance Sunday.
The Chinese tennis player Peng Shuai has told the International Olympic Committee president she's safe and well and wants her privacy respected. The comments during a video call come after the footage of the Wimbledon doubles champion was posted by Chinese state media on Twitter. The player disappeared 3 weeks ago after she made sexual assault allegations against a former Chinese government official.
Entertainment news: Adele has persuaded Spotify to remove the shuffle button as the default option on album pages, so it automatically plays in the artist's own order. The superstar's fourth studio album, 30, launched on Friday to widespread critical acclaim. Adele thanked the streaming giant on Twitter, saying, "Our art tells a story, and our story should be listened to as we intended. Thank you, Spotify, for listening."
And in sport, Manchester United have approached Zinedine Zidane about becoming their manager, but according to sources close to the former Real Madrid boss, he's not interested in going to Old Trafford at this point. According to those sources, Zidane is not keen on a move to United right now. He's been linked with the French national side and Paris Saint-Germain and would reportedly prefer to consider those options when or if they become available. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was sacked yesterday after Saturday's 4-1 defeat at Watford.
Quick look at the weather. Today it's going to see a chilly but mostly sunny day for much of England and Wales, but thicker cloud and a few spots of rain will push in across northern Scotland. Eastern coasts may see the odd shower too.
Now, the race is on to electrify vehicles by 2030. At the heart of that government plan is to develop gigafactories in the UK that will supply batteries to vehicles. Coventry Airport is one site that's being considered, and earlier this year, the Prime Minister and the Business Secretary expressed their support for its development. However, some local businesses who'll be forced to relocate are objecting.
Our West Midlands reporter Balvinder Sidhu joins us now live from Coventry. Balvinder, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Simon and Rosie. Yes, I am at Coventry Airport. This site has been identified as a potential site for a gigafactory where batteries will be manufactured to supply all vehicles to make them electric by 2030. So the race is on to get these factories set up, not just here, but up in the northeast and Merseyside. But there are some objections that this site in particular isn't appropriate. Joining me now is the director of a company that looks after small planes. It's kind of like the MOT equivalent of cars. Steve Clark, good morning to you. If you just want to come in here. Thank you so much for joining me.
Morning,
I understand that you are supportive of the idea of a gigafactory. You think it's important in terms of the car manufacturing industry and also the economy. However, you're not happy about this site being closed to make that happen.
Yes, that's right, Balvinder. The problem is that we're an active airport, and we have a 2-kilometre tarmac runway out there, paid for by taxpayers, which is very much part of the national infrastructure for aviation, which is supported through the Department of Transport. The gigafactory should really be built somewhere else, preferably on a brownfield site, and somewhere where we do not need to have to relocate all the businesses here and shut a very important national resource. There are very few regional airports left in the country. Most of the other airports are under threat of development, and we need to ensure that we move forward in the same light. There's new developments with synthetic fuel, electric batteries for aircraft, and we want to be part of that. We want to be part of the new way forward just as much as the gigafactory, which should be built elsewhere.
I mean, the other argument is that, look, 6,000 jobs will be created as a consequence of this factory, 3 times as much in the supply chain. So isn't that sort of a no-brainer in terms of what we should be building here?
Yes, it would be if you just look at it as a simple argument like that. But like everything, the devil is in the detail. And there is no end user. It is a property development company which is running the airport. And they, in conjunction with the council, are speculating that if they shut the airport and prepare it, then hopefully an outside battery manufacturer might come in with the £1.5 billion investment to start that project. They don't have anybody lined up. If they did, they would be letting us all know about it. At the moment, it's pure speculation, and we're going to lose one of our few very precious regional airports purely for speculation.
Well, I did speak to Councillor Jim O'Boyle from Coventry City Council, who have submitted the planning permission to get this site built for a gigafactory, and he disagrees with what Steve is saying.
Coventry Airport is located very close to Birmingham International Airport. It's a very niche airport. Yes, there are a couple of hundred jobs on the site. They're important. We're working with those companies and want to see what we can do to support them going forward. But we're talking about potentially 6,000 direct jobs on this site, with 3 times that in the supply chain. It's important because Coventry is located in the heart of the automotive sector in our country. 50,000 jobs rely on the automotive sector here. A third of all vehicles that are built in this country are built in this region. And if we don't help them to electrify and look to the future, we will lose all those jobs.
So Councillor Jim O'Boyle also told me that he thinks the government need to act super urgently. He says that, you know, we've only got 9 years until all vehicles have to be electrified. That's by 2030. So this factory really needs to be up and running within the next 3 to 4 years. Now, the other objections, not just Steve Clark, but the Civil Aviation Authority have objected to this site, and so have an advisory board, which the Transport Secretary was in the papers recently for funding the advisory board to the Civil Aviation Authority, who are also objecting to this site, this factory being built at Coventry Airport. Now, the Department of Transport Secretary have said that the Transport Secretary is committed to the government's plans to build gigafactories in this country and to fully electrify all vehicles by 2030. However, you know, all new and existing transport provision does need to be assessed against what the local users of this airfield, and an assessment of this site is currently underway. So a planning application was submitted in the summer. The City Council were hopeful that they would have had a result back on that by now, but they think they'll get that in the new year. They're desperate for this site to be developed, but others are concerned that you know, it isn't the best site, and they're also concerned that, you know, the airport will close and there will be no gigafactory.
Balvinder, thank you very much. That's Balvinder Sidhu, and we're hearing more from her later on this morning.
Now, at lunchtime on GB News, Gloria De Piero presents a special series of interviews called The Real Me. She meets the person behind the politics. If you haven't come across them, then do check them out on the GB News app or on our YouTube channel.
In the latest Real Me, coming up later today, Gloria talks to Shadow Health Secretary Jonathan Ashworth.
She said, "I'm sorry." And I said, "He's dead, isn't he?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "What was it?" And she said, almost matter-of-factly, but not in a cruel way, and I don't blame her for it, this woman, she said, "You do know your dad was an alcoholic, don't you?" And of course I knew. Of course I knew I'd grown up with it. But to hear those words said out loud in that way, it just sort of, it was like a punch in the stomach, or, I don't know, a slap round the face, or like a ton of bricks had come down on me. Yeah, and he was, what, 60? It's no age, is it?
Well, it's a remarkable interview. Keir Starmer has tweeted about it already, and you can see that emotionally powerful interview in full on Gloria's show, The Briefing. It's today at 12 noon here on GB News.
Coming up here on the programme, it is Black Friday this Friday, but beware of the bargains you know about this already that look too good to be true. We'll take a look at some of them after this.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to today's weather and how the UK is looking, largely dry with plenty of sunshine. The far north is going to be cloudier. Let's take a bit of a closer look at the details. Now, the southwest can continue to see lots of sunshine during the rest of the day, and it will feel a bit warmer than yesterday with highs of about 10 degrees. Let's go to the southeast. It's going to be a dry, sunny but cold day for many of us. Coastal areas are going to see some showers throughout the day. Let's go to Wales. You may also see the odd stray shower near the coast. Otherwise, it's going to be cold but sunny. The sun will also shine across the Midlands for the rest of today. Let's move over there with very little cloud in the sky. We can look at some temperatures in Birmingham, highs of 8 degrees today. Despite the sun, it is then going to feel quite cold. Why don't we move into northern England? The best of the sunshine is going to be across the west with some shower clouds affecting eastern coast throughout the day. Top temperatures here as well of 8 degrees Celsius, that's tomorrow. Southern Scotland, we're going to see some sunshine, but further north it will be rather cloudy with some spells of rain. Milder here though, with highs of 9 degrees Celsius. Let's look to the north coast of Northern Ireland. It's going to be rather cloudy during Monday, but elsewhere we'll be back into the sunshine with highs of 9 degrees. Much of the UK will then hold on to the clear skies as we approach dusk, leading to a chilly evening. And that is how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. You're watching The Great British Breakfast with Rosie and Simon. It's 24 minutes now past 6. The Prime Minister is set to announce a law that will see all new homes and buildings in England required to install electric vehicle charging points from next year, at a rate of around 145,000 charging points installed across the country per year. Let's talk about this and other business headlines of the day with David Buick, market commentator at Aquis Exchange. David, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, and no, it's not chocolate on my face. I had an argument with the pavement yesterday. Forgive me.
Oh, my word, that was very sore. As long as you're all right.
Flat. Absolutely fine.
Good. Now, let's talk about electric cars. Do you think this is the right move?
Absolutely. I was surprised, Simon, actually, there are only 25,000 points of electric communication for cars at the moment, which seems very small to me. So every new house, every new office block, every new shop, supermarket's got to have these things. Otherwise, this revolution, which was supposed to have underway by 2030, is never going to take place. I think the other consideration which we're all going to have to worry about is the transfer from petrol and diesel cars to electric. At the moment, it's about 10% is now electric, which has surprised me because I think it's quite a big figure. But there's still an awful lot of concern when you talk to people is, I'm not ready yet for two reasons. I've just bought my other car 3 or 4 years ago. It's cost me a lot of money. I'm going to get very little for it. The second-hand market at the moment, as I understand it, is pretty good. But I don't think that situation is going to last very long. And we need to see a very smooth transfer away, particularly if companies like Jaguar, Rover and Ford and others and Volvo are going to be fully electronic between 25 and 2030.
Yeah, I mean, I've got an electric car and, you know, it's difficult finding chargers that work all the time. The infrastructure is not there at the moment, frankly. You queue up at these charging points, people get quite cross, and that's now. So in a couple of years' time, unless they sort this out, it's going to be very difficult. And of course, you've got the other issue, which is if you live in a flat, how are you going to charge a car if there are lots of you parking outside?
Well, we've got, in our block of flats, there's 200 flats. We've just got 1 point. Now, we haven't got that many charging points, but you raise a very, very important point. The other thing is that we're going to have a much higher quality of battery as well, because very few people can be as chilled out and laid back and go to some station saying, well, I'll go and have a pint and a pie for 40 minutes while I fill up my car with electricity. People need to be able to do it, frankly, in 10 minutes. And I think the technology is some way off that. But Simon and Rosie, I think that's incredibly important that the hubs actually get put into all these buildings at a rate of knots. Otherwise, this transfer is going to be very difficult.
Talking about the pace of progress, we're expecting to hear from the Confederation of British Industry today, and they say actually the climate targets that, of course, we've been talking about so much with COP26 actually provides the opportunity for this new industrial revolution. Do you see that?
It's got to happen because of things like shipbuilding, steel in Sheffield, Lancashire mills, woolen mills in Yorkshire. I mean, I don't want to be disrespectful, but frankly, they're for the birds going forward. We've got 67 million people living in the United Kingdom. And we need to understand that the new way forward, unless you want London to keep grabbing every little nugget of new business going, and that has to be completely wrong, then we have to deal with the fact that people have to be introduced through education to things like biotechs, to electrical goods, to graphic design, to all kinds of other things, because otherwise the high streets that we see around the industrial conurbations of Lancashire, Yorkshire and the Midlands is going to look absolutely horrific. And what we do not want is to see that kind of thing that you see when you're in a train going between Baltimore and Philadelphia, where I've never seen such deprivation in all my life. It could happen here. And I think the idea of levelling up that the Prime Minister has talked about, you know, as the old bard said, talkers are no good doers. We need to actually get into action and get it actually going again, because that's why I think this whole business of the HS2 was so utterly wrong. And what was so much more important was the cross-Pennine situation, so that people could get to work between Lancashire and Yorkshire and all those areas around there, where we're going to see the greatest transfer of emphasis on business, industry and commerce. I think Tony Danker, who's the CBI Director General, is going to spell it out in words of one syllable at their conference in South Shields today.
Staying with the theme, what is it about Boris Johnson and bridges? He didn't get the bridge he wanted in London, and now that promise he made to look at the possibility of a bridge or tunnel connecting Scotland and Northern Ireland, well, that's not going to go anywhere either.
Well, the £64 million bridge in London is but a mere bagatelle to the 20 billion that was estimated to cost between Ireland and Scotland. I mean, first and foremost, in his defence, nobody legislated for COVID-19 and the cost to the country and the borrowing requirement of over 300 billion. So it's for the birds. And also the other political factor, I think, Simon, is that with a country like Scotland that is hell-bent on leaving the United Kingdom under the current leadership of Nicola Sturgeon, why would you spend 2 bob building a bridge for the UK taxpayer between Ireland and Scotland? The answer isn't you wouldn't.
No, you wouldn't. You're right.
So they're not. Just finally, David, the price of bread is going to go up, and it's all about how much we're paying for our wheat. What's going on?
Well, I think it's just one of those things. I think, from what I can understand, not being a particular expert, I think the weather conditions in the United States of America and in Russia and in parts of Europe has been so bad that the wheat count has been very poor. And also, we've still got this horrific business of the supply chain, of getting stuff, at a marketable rate into the supermarkets and the manufacturers and places where they make this stuff. And I think this is one of the reasons. It's all part of the inflation supply chain issue and problem at the moment. But it does annoy me still when you do know that when the United States, in order to keep prices up, that they still burn so much corn and stuff. I know it's not the same as wheat, but it's so much a question of, rather than saying, right, let's get this stuff pushed out around the world, that they'd rather destroy it rather than destroy the price of their goods.
David, it's good to talk to you. Anybody who's tuned in is going to say he's missed a bit with his lipstick. You're okay. That's the message to put out there.
It's the last time I run for a bus. I had an argument with the pavement. It won. I lost.
Yeah. Well, we wish you well. Full recovery on the way, for sure. But it's always good to hear.
Sorry for that.
It's usually good to see you. It's not so good today.
There we are.
David, thank you very much.
You're with the Great British Breakfast. It's gone 6:30 now. Let's give you an overview of what else is happening today. In America, multiple people have died. More than 20 people have been injured after a car crashed into a Christmas parade in a city in Milwaukee. The city's police chief confirmed there were some fatalities and that dozens of people have been left injured. In a press briefing, he told journalists that a person of interest is in custody.
Mourners will pay their respects to the MP Sir David Amess at a funeral service and procession in his Southend West constituency later today. He was stabbed to death while holding a constituency surgery at Belfairs Methodist Church in Leigh-on-Sea last month. Sir David was a devout Catholic. His friend and colleague Mark Francois will deliver a eulogy today at a private ecumenical service at St Mary's Church in Prittlewell. Tomorrow, a requiem mass will be held at Westminster Cathedral in London, where a message from the Pope will be shared.
The double-child killer, Colin Pitchfork, was recalled to jail after he reportedly approached teenage women in the street in a string of incidents. Now, according to the Daily Mail, the 61-year-old appeared to be trying to establish a connection with them. The revelations have sparked calls for urgent reforms to the parole board, which controversially released Pitchfork despite warnings that he remained a danger to the public. Pitchfork was jailed for life after raping and strangling 15-year-olds Linda Mann and Dawn Ashworth in Leicestershire in 1983 and 1986. He was released in September.
The taxi driver who survived the Liverpool terror attack says it's a miracle that he's alive. David Perry described the bombing outside Liverpool Women's Hospital as an evil act and said he's thankful no one else was injured. He and his wife Rachel also thanked the public for their amazing generosity following the blast on Remembrance Sunday.
The Chinese tennis player Peng Shuai has told the International Olympic Committee president she's safe and well and she wants her privacy respected. The comments during a video call come after footage of the Wimbledon doubles champion was posted by the Chinese state media on Twitter. Well, the player disappeared 3 weeks ago after she made sexual assault allegations against a former Chinese government official.
Entertainment news. Adele has persuaded Spotify to remove the shuffle button as the default option on album pages, so it automatically plays in the artist's own order. The superstar's fourth studio album, 30, launched on Friday to widespread critical acclaim. Adele thanked the streaming giant on Twitter, saying, "Our art tells a story and our story should be listened to as we intended. Thank you, Spotify, for listening."
In sport, Manchester United have approached Zinedine Zidane about becoming their manager. But according to sources close to the former Real Madrid boss, he's not interested in going to Old Trafford at this point. According to the sources, he's not keen on a move to United right now. He's been linked with the French national side and Paris Saint-Germain and will reportedly prefer to consider those options when or if they become available. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was sacked yesterday after Saturday's 4-1 defeat at Watford.
Quick look at the weather. It's going to be chilly, but mostly sunny for much of England and Wales, but thicker cloud and a few spots of rain will push in across northern Scotland. Eastern coasts may see the odd shower too.
coming up here on the programme. Christmas is looming, and with Black Friday this week, we'll take you through a look at what you need to be watching out for so you don't fall for a scam.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. It is, 37 minutes past 6 in English. It's 24 minutes to 7. That's what it is. It's Black Friday this Friday, where many shops and online retailers will slash prices on their stocks for the day. However, beware of the bargains that look too good to be true. Last Christmas, over 28,000 shoppers were conned out of their money when shopping online, with £15.4 million lost to scams.
Joining us now is Dr. Nicholas Ryder, a professor in financial crime at the University of the West of England in Bristol. Thank you very much for joining us. We know, don't we, too good to be true, don't buy it. But how are we being conned?
I think consumers have to be aware that with the advent of Black Friday, that fraudsters will try to manipulate individuals in a period where maybe consumers feel increased pressure to actually buy goods because the bargains are to be too good to be true. And I think on many occasions that consumers simply have to be aware that if it's online, it probably is good to be linked into some fraudster.
Well, what's the most common way of scamming money out of people?
I think there's multiple scams, and I think that with the added increase of the internet and the fact that people can now buy things on their tablet, their laptop, normally what you'll find is that if there's an online item which is deemed to be for sale at a significantly lower price than what is the normal market price for a particular good, that's one of the most commonly reported scams. But one of the most important things to remember is that fraud in the UK accounts for 40% of all reported crime, and of that 40%, 52% is cyber-related. So it's not just Black Friday that fraudsters will target, it's 24/7 and 365 days a year.
Presumably it can take quite a long time for you to realise you've been the victim of a scam, because it's only when your item doesn't arrive that you might start asking questions.
Absolutely, yes. I think it's very important that consumers use reputable online shops, for example. They use reputable online sellers, and just to keep as much records as possible about their particular purchases that they've made.
Well, so what would your advice be? Because it's when you see a website that looks real, how can you tell that it's not?
I just think you've got to absolutely double check to the nth level of degree whether that website is reputable. And if it's a website that maybe consumers don't recognise, then it's best to avoid it at all costs. So it's the basic advice that anybody, if it is too good to be true, it is far better for the consumer to actually avoid that particular, maybe purchase the good or goods they're looking for from a more reputable website, or even to check with consumer groups if that sort of local citizens advice bureaus, if that website and company do actually exist.
Nicholas, it's happening to so many of us. If you suspect that you've been the victim of this, what actual actions do you take?
I think one of the most important things would be to initially report it to your bank or credit card provider, and also to report the alleged fraud to Action Fraud, which is free to individuals. So that would be the first step, and obviously try to get the money back. But importantly, consumers have to be aware that fraudsters will try and target you, they will attempt to manipulate you, they will try to put pressure on you, and they will use Black Friday as an excuse to try to get people's funds.
Well, one always assumes it's older people who fall victim to this, but actually what's interesting is 27% of reports came from 20 to 29-year-olds, and 68% of victims were aged 20 to 49.
Absolutely, yes. So I fall into that age category. And it just goes to show, I think, that the more people are actually using social media, online purchases. But in terms of a fraudster, it doesn't matter if you're 16, 25, 46, 66, 86. They will attempt to target you frequently. So to them, it's just a new victim, and fraudsters will always be one step ahead. There'll always be a new scam, an investment scam. We've seen that recently with some of the cryptos that investors have been induced into buy. So consumers have to be aware of the threat level presented by fraudsters.
We're probably more comfortable with spending online and making purchases, shopping on our phone, and maybe more susceptible in that way. Is Black Friday all bad? Will you be searching around for any bargains?
I'll be having a look, yeah, possibly. Whether or not I'll actually buy anything, I doubt very much. But yeah, I'll have a look and see what sort of bargains I can find.
I was just listening on the radio this morning on the way in to one scammer who phoned in. He did serve time for it. But he said what he did, he set up a website, and when you clicked on the terms and conditions button, that, because nobody reads the terms and conditions, that allowed him to keep taking money from people's bank accounts. And I mean, who does read terms and conditions?
That's a very good point, and it's something that absolutely consumers need to be aware that it is very important to read the terms and conditions. So, for example, there's been a number of instances where people have set up an online fraud scam, and at the bottom of the terms and conditions, it says to the consumer, this is a fraud and you will not get your money back. But because consumers don't read the terms and conditions, people then lost losing hundreds of thousands of pounds to that particular individual fraudster. That's how blazing they can be.
If that happens, can you get your money back?
In most cases, yes. Normally, the financial institution, the credit card or debit card provider will provide that money back to you. And what you will find is that if there is eventually sort of some action by a law enforcement agency, such as the Financial Conduct Authority, they will try to get compensation back for the victims of a fraud. But it's not 100% guaranteed. So it's something that consumers need to be aware of in the run-up to Christmas.
Why do we fall for this whole this whole Black Friday thing anyway? This is an American thing, which they have just before Thanksgiving. Why has it come here?
I just think it's about capitalization and marketing by companies, and it's not just the UK; it's across the world. I think it is a way for companies to give the perception, maybe, that they are possibly offering cheaper deals, and it's a way for them to maximise their profits. And I think we saw, 3 or 4 years ago, pre-COVID, where some consumers would end up going into shops to buy a new widescreen TV or a new computer or a electrical goods. It does get very competitive and violent in some instances. So I think that's the reason behind it.
Yeah, you isolate yourself from the violence a little bit if you shop online, don't you? Look, on a wish list of Christmas presents, what are the items that are most likely to fall where you might fall victim to a scam?
I'd probably say maybe electrical items, perhaps Xbox, PlayStation, sort of video games. That probably could be seen as a potential outlet for scammers. Obviously, given the shortage of those particular goods in the last 2 years because of the pandemic, I think that they could be more susceptible than others.
Anybody trying to flog Star Wars things is going to see that Darth Vader behind you and see you're a potential victim for that. You
yes,
bought
my
that.
Apologies for that.
It's really good to see you. Thank you very much for your time this morning, and the warning has been issued. Nicholas Ryder, thanks.
Now, it's 6:45. You're with the Great British Breakfast. Simon and Rosie keeping you company until 9 this morning. Over the weekend, hundreds of midwives joined a nationwide protest calling on the government to do more to help people working in the profession. March with Midwives gatherings took place in more than 50 towns and cities in England, Scotland and Wales.
Well, our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis joins us now live from Nottingham, where one of those demonstrations took place. Will, what was it all about?
Good morning. Yes, this is a story that's been in the making for a number of months. March with Midwives started on the internet. It grew and spread to towns and cities across Britain in places like Leeds, Cardiff and Nottingham, where I am today. Essentially what it's about is a lot of midwives in the industry aren't in a position where they're happy and enjoying what used to be, as they say, quite a productive and pleasant place to work. We all know that we're brought into this world by midwives. One of the midwives that I spoke to at this particular protest yesterday said that it's such an important job that most people overlook. And essentially what it is people feel like they're, as the main campaign for March the Midwife says, that bullying and toxic hierarchical management and systems that are stifling innovation is taking away the traditional role of the midwife. Now, there was hundreds of people up and down the country, but where I was yesterday at the Forest Recreation Ground in Nottingham on Sunday afternoon, I spoke to one midwife, Chantel, who's been working in the community for 25 years around St Anne's here in Nottingham, and she gave a few of the reasons why many people are deciding to leave the profession.
Midwives have just had enough. We're exhausted. The pandemic has put the tin lid basically on what we thought of as our role, and it's made us realise that actually, although we are very wanted in the community, the ability for us to do our job is being hampered. 20 years ago, when I started in the community, it was unheard of for midwives to be off with stress. People would be off with grief, or they'd had a loss of a loved one or something like that, but they would not be off with work-related stress. And that's been the biggest thing that's happened over probably about the last 5 years. We're finding a vast amount of midwives going off with work-related stress. That impacts on your family. Your family, you get home after a long day at work. Your family is the one that the people you turn to for support. Your family are always the ones that you have to say, I'm sorry, we can't do that thing this weekend because I've got to work extra. I'm being asked if I'll cover another shift. So it has a massive impact, and it's an ongoing impact. And eventually it grinds the midwife down.
Now, the statistics here really do speak for themselves. This is one from the Royal College of Midwives. 57% of people in this industry are intending to leave the profession, and only 1 in 30 from a cohort of students actually stays working inside of the profession. Now, what this whole campaign, this protest was about, was getting the government to listen and to make some changes. Midwives say that they need health ministers to conduct an urgent review into the system, as well as funding and restorative pay for what they're saying is underfunding. One of the reasons that they say there's such high levels of people leaving the industry and such high levels of short staffing. Now, why is this particularly worthy of mentioning in Nottingham? Well, right now there's a review underway into maternity services in Nottingham after reports of 46 babies suffered brain damage and 19 were stillborn between 2010 and 2020. Last year, inspectors rated the maternity units in Nottingham City Hospital and the Queen's Medical Centre as inadequate. Now, the Department for Health and Social Care said that it was committed to patient safety, eradicating avoidable harms and making the NHS the safest place in the world to give birth. Now, as I said, this is such an important job. So many people go into the industry, but people aren't staying. And as we've seen these protests over the weekend, there's a lot of people who really do want to see system change in an industry that they love being a part of, but find real difficult to stay in right now.
Well, thank you very much for that.
Coming up here on the programme, a leading head teacher is pleading for adults to stop calling students woke and start taking their concerns regarding racism, sexism and climate change more seriously. We'll discuss this further after the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Well, let's have a look at what's in store today. Largely dry with plenty of sunshine, although the far north will be cloudier. Let's take a look at the details. And to the southwest, we'll continue to see lots of sunshine there during the rest of today. It'll feel a tad warmer than yesterday, with highs possibly reaching 10 or 11 degrees. Across to the southeast, it's going to be dry, sunny, but cold for many. Over coastal areas may see some showers throughout the day. Heading west to Wales, may also see the odd stray shower near the coast. Otherwise, it will be cold but sunny. The sun will shine across as we go to the Midlands during the rest of today, with very little cloud in the sky. Despite the sun, it will be cold with a high of 8 degrees Celsius. Well, moving to the north of England, and the best of the sunshine will be across the west, with some shower clouds affecting eastern coasts throughout the day. Top temperatures here of 6 to 8 Celsius. Southern Scotland will also see the sunshine. Further north, it'll be rather cloudy with some spells of rain. It'll be milder here, though, with highs from 7 to 10 Celsius possible. The northern coast of Northern Ireland will also be rather cloudy during Monday, but elsewhere, back into the sunshine with a high of 9 degrees Celsius. Much of the UK will then hold on to the clear skies as we approach dusk, leading to a chilly evening. That's how the weather's shaping up for the rest of the day.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back to the Great British Breakfast with Simon and Rosie. It's 7 minutes to 7.
Let's take you through the day's front pages. And Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been criticised on the Metro for not wearing a face mask on a crowded train. Now, that's just a day after apologising for not wearing one during a hospital visit.
The Prime Minister has been warned that he can't take the support of his MPs for granted as he faces a backbench rebellion over plans to scale back the social care cap. That's on the front page of The Guardian this morning.
The Daily Telegraph leads with growing rage across Europe, as they describe it, as COVID-19 restrictions are tightened again.
Daily Mail reports on the reason why child murderer Colin Pitchfork was recalled to prison. He allegedly approached teenage women in the street in a string of incidents.
Let's look at the Daily Mirror. They're investigating fur farms in Finland, where animals are being used to make fashion items for shoppers here in the UK.
Fur Farms Fashion Finland. There we are. MPs.
I thought I managed it quite well, I have to say.
No, nobody noticed. MPs may be avoiding big tax bills on what they earn from second jobs. That's the report in the Times newspaper this morning.
And the Eye reports on a push to make COVID-19 vaccination boosters available to all of those aged 18 and over.
The Health Secretary has said that the UK is on track to avoid a Christmas lockdown. That's on the front page of the Daily Express this morning.
The Daily Star leads with conflicting weather forecasts. Polar opposites for the winter, so that's not really telling you anything. Basically, we don't know. They say forecasters are at war over what the forecast is going to be.
Well, what this is the Met Office, who produced their report, and then the BBC, which switched from the Met Office to a New Zealand-owned group, actually, a few years ago, and the two are giving completely different forecasts. And we spoke to John Hammond about this last Thursday, and he was sort of hedging his bets as well.
He was.
He was saying all the computers, it depends what, well, pays you money.
He basically said there might be some snow soon.
Yes, but then there might not.
Yes.
I could be a forecaster.
Maybe
it could be quite warm today if it's not too cold.
It could. At 5 minutes to 7, let's give you a quick overview of what else is going on today. And in America, at least 5 people have died. Dozens more have been injured after a car crashed into a Christmas parade in a city of Milwaukee. The city's police chief confirmed there were some fatalities and that at least 40 people were injured. In a press briefing, he told journalists that a person of interest is in custody.
Mourners will pay their respects to the MP Sir David Amess at a funeral service and procession in his Southend West constituency later today. He was stabbed to death while holding a constituency surgery at a Methodist church in Leigh-on-Sea last month. Sir David was a devout Catholic. His friend and colleague Mark Francois will deliver a eulogy today at a private ecumenical service at St Mary's Church in Prittlewell. Tomorrow, a Requiem Mass will be held at Westminster Cathedral in London, where a message from the Pope will be shared.
The double-child killer, Colin Pitchfork, has been recalled to jail after he reportedly approached teenage women in the street in a string of incidents. Now, according to the Daily Mail, the 61-year-old appeared to be trying to establish a connection with them. The revelations have sparked calls for urgent reforms to the parole board, which controversially released Pitchfork despite warnings that he remained a danger to the public. Pitchfork was jailed for life after raping and strangling 15-year-olds Linda Mann and Dawn Ashworth in Leicestershire in 1983 and 1986. He was released in September.
The taxi driver who survived the Liverpool terror attack says it's a miracle that he's alive. David Perry described the bombing outside Liverpool Women's Hospital as an evil act and said he's thankful no one else was injured. He and his wife Rachel also thanked the public for their amazing generosity following the blast on Remembrance Sunday.
Chinese tennis player Peng Shuai has told the International Olympic Committee president she's safe and well and wants her privacy respected. The comments during a video call come after footage of the Wimbledon doubles champion was posted by the Chinese state media on Twitter. The player disappeared 3 weeks ago after she made sexual assault allegations against a former Chinese government official.
Entertainment news. Adele has persuaded Spotify to remove the shuffle button as the default option on album pages, so it automatically plays in the artist's own order. The superstar's 4th studio album, 30, launched on Friday to widespread critical acclaim. Adele thanked the streaming giant on Twitter, saying, "Our art tells a story, and our story should be listened to as we intended. Thank you, Spotify, for listening."
I think that makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Did you see her on the telly last night?
I didn't.
Fabulous concert.
But lots of people... I saw, actually, clips of some rather high-profile people dancing at the concert.
There were. And also her old English teacher from school was there, and she burst in tears. And it's on the front page of the Mail, actually, and it's "Someone Like Boo-Hoo. Why was Adele in tears at the Palladium?" It was an amazing concert. Absolutely stunning.
I am very envious of the people who managed to get tickets for her 2-day spectacle coming up next year. It was an absolute scrum.
Weren't you there last night? Your invitation? Oh.
Sadly, no.
Oh, I didn't think I saw you.
Let's give you a brief sports roundup. Manchester United, they've approached Zinedine Zidane about becoming their manager. According to sources close to the former Real Madrid boss, he's not interested in going to Old Trafford at this point.
Not interested.
According to those sources, Zidane is not keen on a move to United right now. He has been linked instead with the French national side and Paris Saint-Germain, and will reportedly, though, prefer to consider those options when or if they become available. He's being very, very aloof right now. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was sacked yesterday after Saturday's 4-1 defeat at Watford.
Isn't that an egg? Oh, no, it's a loof. Here all week, sadly.
Also, a story we very briefly told you about earlier. Leading head teachers asked adults to stop mocking young people by calling them woke for standing up to the things they believe in. It's Samantha Price. She's the president of the Girls' School Association. She's urging adults to share the concerns of students regarding issues of racism, sexism and climate change instead of using the term woke to criticise or demean them.
I'm not aware that is that a thing?
Well, it's not being levelled at us, is it? I think we're not the young people who are being criticised of being woke.
No, it's older people being criticised for accusing youngsters of being woke. I mean, just because they've got no life experience and don't understand perhaps some of the issues in detail doesn't mean we can criticise them. I think that's perhaps what she's not saying.
Maybe.
GB Views at gbnews.uk. As you can see, some of us haven't slept very well overnight and got out of bed the wrong side this morning. Rah.
A very good morning. Monday, the 22nd of November. These are the stories that matter to you and to us on the Great British Breakfast today with Simon McCoy and me, Rosie Wright.
It's 7 o'clock now. Growing rage across Europe as COVID-19 restrictions are tightened again. This as the UK Health Secretary Sajid Javid plays down the threat of fresh restrictions here at home. Well, are you worried that we could be next? Email us gbviews at gbnews.uk.
Christmas parade horror. At least 5 people have been killed and many injured after a car crashes into a Christmas parade in a US city in Milwaukee. We're going to bring you the latest on the investigation.
Final goodbyes. Mourners will pay their respects to MP Sir David Amess at a funeral service in his Southend West constituency. He was stabbed to death at a local surgery last month. There'll be another service of remembrance in Westminster tomorrow.
Fulfilling her duties as a great-grandmother, the Queen attends a rare double christening at Windsor after nearly a month's absence from public duties amid concerns over her health.
Zinedine Zidane is reportedly out of the race to become Manchester United's next manager. Why the French superstar has turned down a top job, we'll tell you more.
And a top head teacher is warning labelling students woke could lead them to giving up on campaigns. We'll explain why.
A very good morning to you. Now, violence continued across Europe for a third day in a row as protesters fight back against new COVID restrictions. In Brussels, riot police were forced to use water cannon and tear gas against demonstrators opposed to the introduction of COVID passes and plans for mandatory vaccines.
Meanwhile, in the Netherlands, a 3-week partial lockdown was imposed after a record spike in COVID cases. Riots broke out in Rotterdam on Saturday, where police fired gunshots. On Sunday, fireworks and rocks were hurled at police in The Hague. Finally, tens of thousands of people protested in Austria's capital, Vienna, after the government announced a new national lockdown and plans to make jabs compulsory in February of next year.
Well, although our Health Secretary Sajid Javid has said that the UK will remain firmly in Plan A at the moment, could the UK see similar restrictions reimposed if numbers rise? Well, Roy Lilly is a former NHS Trust chairman and joins us now. Roy, good to see you back. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Good morning, Rosie, and good morning, Simon.
Nice to see you. Roy, what do you think? The sense is that we've already had our fourth wave and that we're fairly advanced in terms of what Europe is going through now, and that therefore we will avoid this.
Well, you've kind of highlighted the conundrum. That's the question. The question is, have we seen the crescendo and will it tail off, or is it building? I mean, I just got the numbers here. The 7-day rolling average of new cases on this day last year was just under 18,000. And the 7-day rolling average on this day this year is 35,000. So it is going up. We've got over 8,000 people in hospital. Look, I think the answer is, Simon, we don't know. The indications are that vaccination has made a big impact on the number of cases, and certainly the number of admissions is interesting. I'll just tell you what they are. A year ago on this day, the 7-day rolling average was 1,600, but right now it's 800. So the numbers of people going into hospital are going up, but the number of infections is going up, but the number of admissions is not. So hopefully the vaccination will hold. However, there is a caveat to that. There seems to be a stall in the number of people getting their second vaccination. and there's a big push now to get everybody through their second and onto their third vaccination. So the vaccination seems to be holding the line, but the job on getting vaccinated isn't over.
Do you think there's a bit of a PR problem whereby there's a little bit of complacency about going to get that third jab, because it's only about a third of people eligible for the booster jab who've actually gone to go and get it?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, if you cast your mind back to when we did the first vaccinations, there were kind of walk-in arrangements. I mean, I'm speaking to you from East London. Just across the road from me is the Excel Centre. That was a big vaccination centre. I just kind of rocked up and got my vaccination there. Now, of course, you have to make an appointment. You have to do it online. It's a big push for the GPs to do it, who are as busy as hell as it is. It's more difficult to get the vaccination. Now, I mean, it's not difficult if you really want a vaccination. You'll sort of take time off and do it, or evenings or weekends or something, you'll do it. And funnily enough, on Saturday, I looked at the numbers for Saturday, and there was a big spike in the number of people who were getting vaccinated on Saturday. So that tells us something. The majority of us are back at work, and that means we have to fit the vaccination around our work. I think the trick here would be to make it easier for people to get vaccinated.
I was one of those on Saturday who had my booster, and I actually think it's worth making the point. I thought the process was absolutely amazing. I got a text, you click on a link, it gives you a choice of options in terms of when to do it, and it was the simplest thing on earth. And I think praise where praise is due. When this system works, my God, it works.
I agree. And the amount of work that's gone on behind to make that happen. I mean, it sounds simple, doesn't it? Connect into your health record, figure out what you've had, send you a text and a link, you go on there, make an appointment, simple. But the complications of that start with actually being able to get into your health record to start with in the GP surgery. There are 8,000 GP surgeries. There are about 4 or 5 different systems. It's been a gargantuan effort to make that work. And so, yes, you're right. The system is simple. What we've got to do now is to make it simple for people to make that decision. And Rosie's right. I mean, there is a big PR campaign now. You can't put the telly on or listen to anything on the wireless radio, I suppose I should say, that we're out without you being implored to get vaccinated. So there's a big push, and it is really very important.
How critical is it? We always hear comments that NHS is in crisis, it's stretched beyond capacity, but doctors saying, we've been saying that before, but now we really, really mean it. With waiting lists as long as they are, how sort of catastrophic would it be if we started to see that surge that we are seeing in Europe happen here too?
Well, I don't know about, I'm really not sure, and I don't think any of the epidemiologists are sure about the surge. It's the unknown effect of vaccinations, and we've been able to vaccinate a lot of people. If you look at what Austria, in the headlines you were talking about Austria, well, they've done very poorly on vaccinations. They've only vaccinated about 63% with the first vaccination. So that's why they've got a problem. I mean, let's assume for a moment that the vaccination thing will get us out of jail on this. On top of that, we've got, and I think there'll be an announcement this week that waiting lists are over 6 million. And we've got all the seasonal push that there is. Mainly 1 in 5 beds is mainly older people waiting to get out with a social care package. I mean, the NHS is super busy, and really now the sort of unsustainable levels of pressure have become the default pressure. And the NHS isn't going to sort of fold over. They won't say, oh, we can't cope, and put a sign up that says closed. But what will happen is the queues will get longer and the waits will get longer, and that's where it gets really very difficult.
Yeah, you mentioned social care. I've got personal experience of this at the moment. I have a relative who's in hospital, doesn't need to be there, but they won't let him out until there's care in place, and it's just not there at the moment. You must be frustrated. I think a lot of people were very frustrated when the Prime Minister went on the steps of Downing Street and said that was his priority. He was going to sort out social care. We haven't got anywhere with it, have we?
No, not really. And there's an argy-bargy now going on. It'll be in the House of Commons this week about the cap and the impact of the cap and the extent to which the cap impacts the amount of money that people on lower incomes, the proportion of their income, will pay towards their care costs. This is absolutely not solved. Just putting a bit more money into it at some end of the scale doesn't resolve the issue. Social care, it needs a kind of a management reappraisal. Its relationship with a health service needs to be properly formalised. Is it going to be merged with healthcare or not? Or is it just going to be about sharing the money and sharing data? And they have an incredibly difficult staff shortage. I mean, I think there's something like 100,000 shortages. They just can't get people to come into social care, either as carers or as planners for care packages. It's very, very tricky. And of course, as we've said before, Simon, you can't ring Amazon and get a box of doctors or a box of care staff delivered. It takes time to train these people.
Yeah. My arm's aching after my booster. Did yours?
Yes, but don't worry. It's only a couple of days. Be a big boy, don't be a woke.
And Roy, actually, we should mention...
Awoke, did you? Sorry, did you say awoke? You did, didn't you? My word.
But just to let you know, I was listening to the earlier bit.
That's good.
It was about young people. You must remember what that was like. Oh, no, you... Anyway, let's not make this too personal. It's a Monday morning. We can't do it. Sorry, I interrupted.
Well, the one real positive is that now, if you want your booster jab, you don't have to wait for an appointment. You can walk in, can't you?
Yes, you can, and that's a big change, and hopefully that's the step change that we're looking for.
Roy, it's good to see you. There's no one I'd rather swap insults with on a Monday morning than Roy Lilly. Nice to see you.
It's 11 minutes past 7. Let's give you an overview of what else is happening today. In America, at least 5 people have died. Dozens more have been injured after a car crashed into a Christmas parade in a city in Milwaukee. The city's police chief confirmed there were some fatalities. At least 40 people have been hurt. In a press briefing, he told journalists that a person of interest is in custody.
Mourners will pay their respects to the MP Sir David Amess at a funeral service and procession in his Southend West constituency later today. He was stabbed to death while holding a constituency surgery in Leigh-on-Sea last month. Sir David was a devout Catholic. His friend and colleague Mark Francois will deliver a eulogy today at a private ecumenical service at St Mary's Church in Prittlewell. Tomorrow, a Requiem Mass will be held at Westminster Cathedral in London, where a message from the Pope will be shared.
The double child killer, Colin Pitchfork, was recalled to jail after he reportedly approached teenage women in the street in a string of incidents. According to the Daily Mail, the 61-year-old appeared to be trying to establish a connection with them. The revelations have sparked calls for urgent reforms to the parole board, which controversially released Pitchfork. Despite warnings, he remained a danger to the public. Pitchfork was jailed for life after raping and strangling 15-year-olds Linda Mann and Dawn Ashworth in Leicestershire in 1983 and 1986. He was released in September.
The taxi driver who survived the Liverpool terror attack says it's a miracle that he's alive. David Perry described the bombing outside Liverpool Women's Hospital as an evil act and said he's thankful that no one else was injured. He and his wife Rachel also thanked the public for their amazing generosity following the blast on Remembrance Sunday.
The Chinese tennis player Peng Shuai has told the International Olympic Committee president she's safe and well. She wants her privacy respected. The comments during a video call come after footage of the Wimbledon doubles champion was posted by the Chinese state media on Twitter. The player disappeared 3 weeks ago after she made a sexual assault allegation against a former Chinese government official.
Look at the entertainment news. Adele has persuaded Spotify to remove the shuffle button as the default option on album pages, so it automatically plays in the artist's own order. The superstar's fourth studio album, 30, launched on Friday to widespread critical acclaim. Adele thanked the streaming giant on Twitter, saying, "Our art tells a story, and our story should be listened to as we intended. Thank you, Spotify, for listening."
In sport, Manchester United have approached Zinedine Zidane about becoming their manager, but according to sources close to the former Real Madrid boss, he's not interested in going to Old Trafford at this point. The sources say he's not keen on a move to United right now. He has been linked with the French national side and Paris Saint-Germain, and will reportedly prefer to consider going to those if or when those options became available. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was sacked yesterday after Saturday's 4-1 defeat at Watford.
Let's have a look at the weather today. It's going to be chilly but mostly sunny for much of England and Wales, but thicker cloud and a few spots of rain will push in across northern Scotland. Eastern coasts may see the odd shower too.
It's coming up to 7:15.
Why, you're very cheerful. It's nice.
It's Monday. I'm happy to be here. Is there any complaint about that?
No, I understand fully.
Okay. The race is on to electrify vehicles by 2030. At the heart of that government plan is to develop gigafactories in the UK that will supply batteries to vehicles.
Coventry Airport is one site that's been considered, and earlier this year the Prime Minister and the business sector expressed their support for its development. However, some local businesses who'll be forced to relocate, well, they're objecting. Our West Midlands reporter Balvinder Sidhu joins us now live from Coventry. Balvinder, good morning to you.
Good morning, Simon. Yes, that's right. There are some business owners that are not happy about Coventry Airport closing down to make way for a gigafactory. One of them is Steve Clark. Steve Clark, you run a business here, which is like an MOT service, but for light aircraft. Why, are you so concerned? I mean, surely you can relocate your business because your customers come from all over the country.
The problem, Balvinder, is that the runway here is 2 kilometres of tarmac, and it is a very capable facility, like the aeroplanes that we maintain. And we can't relocate to a smaller airfield, many of them locally, which are also under threat of redevelopment. Probably the equivalent airfields for us would be Oxford or Gloucester, which, not surprisingly, are actually doing very well at the moment in terms of expansion for business aviation. And that's what we'd like Coventry to do. We want a win-win situation where Coventry continues as an expanding airport and the gigafactory is built somewhere on a brownfield site where we can support it.
What impact will this have on your business? How many people do you employ?
We employ 12 people currently, many of them local, and to relocate to a facility that would enable us to continue in a similar vein would mean moving many miles, would actually probably mean we might lose half our staff perhaps, and then we would have to we would get no support for this either, because we're currently on a private site as such, so we would get no compensation, and we'd be in dire straits really.
I mean, the other argument is, look, car manufacturing is at the heart of the industry here in the West Midlands. This gigafactory proposal, 6,000 jobs, triple that within the supply chain. So surely this is the best, proposal for this site.
No, it's quite the opposite. Our real worry is that what will happen is we'll have a lose-lose situation where we will end up with no airport and no gigafactory. Because
why is that?
Well, basically, it's all speculation. The developers that wish to close the airport are saying that hopefully a big company will come in from outside that will provide the £1.5 billion of investment necessary to develop this very large gigafactory. And we're saying that that's very unlikely to happen. And what really could happen is we end up with warehouses on this site, no airport and no gigafactory, because it is, at the end of the day, it is a greenfield site. We are a greenfield site, and they're using the gigafactory to get the exceptional circumstances to close the airport.
Well, I did speak to Councillor Jim O'Boyle from Coventry City Council, and he said that this site has to be used for the purposes that they've applied planning permission for, and he also said that economically it is the best thing to do.
Coventry Airport is located very close to Birmingham International Airport. It's a very niche airport. Yes, there are a couple of hundred jobs on the site. They're important. We're working with those companies and want to see what we can do to support them going forward. But we're talking about potentially 6,000 direct jobs on this site, with 3 times that in the supply chain. It's important because Coventry is located in the heart of the automotive sector in our country. 50,000 jobs rely on the automotive sector here. A third of all vehicles that are built in this country are built in this region. And if we don't help them to electrify and look to the future, we will lose all those jobs.
So Steve's business is just one of many that are based here that have objected to this site being used for a gigafactory. The Civil Aviation Authority have also objected, and one of their advisory boards have objected as well. They said that the air ambulances are based here and there are other businesses. Now, Grant Shapps, the Transport Secretary, has been reported to be using public money to fund the advisory board to the Civil Aviation Authority, who are objecting to the airport being developed into into a gigafactory. So I did contact the Department of Transport, who said that he is committed to supporting all forms of transport, and he has supported the case for gigafactories across the country to help meet the government's target to phase out petrol and diesel cars by 2030. And all new developments will be assessed against existing transport provision, and the Transport Secretary is aware that the local council is considering users of this airfield. So, you know, on the one hand, you know, the council are desperate for this to get moving. Planning permission was applied for in July. We're nearly, you know, in December now. So they want this to, you know, they're saying that the race is on, you know, to electrify all vehicles by 2030, which means this factory really needs to be up and running within 3 to 4 years. Then they, you know, they still need to find an investor. So they're saying the government need to get around the table and get this moving. You know, Kwasi Kwarteng has shown his support. The Prime Minister was here earlier this year also showing his support for this site being used. But unfortunately, the objections are also coming in thick and fast, which means that we're not sure where this is going to be going.
Balvinder, thank you very much. That's Balvinder Sidhu, and we'll have more from her throughout the morning.
It's 20 minutes past 7 now at lunchtime here on GB News. Gloria De Piero presents a special series of interviews. They're called The Real Me, where the idea is she meets the person behind the politics.
Now, if you haven't come across them, check them out on the BBC News app or on the YouTube channel. And
On the GB News app, on the GB News app.
What did I say?
You said something else. You said a different broadcaster.
Did I?
Yes.
Did I?
Yes, you did.
I had my jab on Saturday. I'm all over the place. Sorry.
That's okay.
I'll ask you later who it was. Now, in the latest Real Me, coming up later today here on GB News, Gloria talks to Shadow Health Secretary Jonathan Ashworth.
She said, "I'm sorry." And I said, "He's dead, isn't he?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "What was it?" And she said, almost matter-of-factly, but not in a cruel way, and I don't blame her for it, this woman, she said, "You do know your dad was an alcoholic, don't you?" And of course I knew. Of course I knew I'd grown up with it. But to hear those words said out loud in that way, it just sort of, it was like a punch in the stomach, or I don't know, a slap round the face, or like a ton of bricks had come down on me. Yeah, and he was what, 60? It's no age, is it?
Of course, it's a really powerful interview. You can see
Keir
the thing.
Starmer tweeted about it at the weekend.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's going to be brilliant. So have a watch. Gloria's show, The Briefing, today at 12 o'clock on GB News.
GB News. Now, coming up, it's Black Friday this Friday, but beware of the bargains that just look too good to be true. We'll be taking a look at this and that in just a moment.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
What?
Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking largely dry with plenty of sunshine. Let's take a look at some of the details, though. The southwest is going to continue to see lots of sunshine during the rest of the day. It's going to feel a bit warmer than yesterday, with highs reaching 9-10 degrees Celsius. Let's go to the southeast. It's going to be a dry, sunny but cold day for many. Coastal areas are going to see some showers, though, throughout the day, so a little bit rainy there. Let's head over to Wales. We're going to see the odd stray shower near the coast. Otherwise, it will be a cold day but sunny. That's sort of bringing true for much of the country today. The sun will also shine across the Midlands during the rest of the day with very little cloud in the sky. Despite that, though, it's going to be brilliant sun, but it's going to still be cold. Highs of about 8 degrees today. Let's head over to northern England. The best of the sunshine is going to be across the west, with some clouds affecting eastern coasts throughout the day. Top temperatures here of around 8 degrees Celsius. Southern Scotland's going to see some sunshine as well. Further north, though, it's going to be really cloudy with some spells of rain. It's going to be milder here, though, with highs of 10 degrees Celsius. 7 degrees there in Edinburgh, though. The north coast of Northern Ireland is going to be rather cloudy during Monday, but elsewhere we'll be back into the sunshine with a high of 9 degrees Celsius. Much of the UK then will hold on to clear skies as we approach dusk, leading to a chilly evening. And that is how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. It is 26 minutes past 7. You're watching The Great British Breakfast with Rosie and Simon.
Now, as hundreds of migrants continue to arrive on UK shores every day, the Prime Minister Boris Johnson has asked a cross-government task force to consider options to deter migrants from crossing the Channel. The latest option considered is to house asylum seekers in army barracks rather than hotels while they await processing. Cabinet Minister Stephen Barclay will chair the first meeting of the initiative early this week in a bid to address the Channel crossing crisis.
Well, Amandeep Bogal is a Conservative commentator, joins us now. A very good morning to you.
Yes, good morning, Simon. Good morning.
This is the first meeting, and we've had this crisis now for, well, years.
Yes, exactly. And this is a crisis, but it's not just a crisis in terms of illegal migration. It's also a crisis in terms of the vulnerable people that are being exploited by organized criminal gangs. And it's a failure of the European Union, the French, the Italians, and it's a monumental failure in protecting the most vulnerable from having to take such dangerous journeys across the Channel. And of course, it is a huge challenge, not only to our border force, who sometimes have perhaps not functioned as the way that perhaps the Home Secretary has perhaps wanted, or they could have to protect Britain's national interest.
There was a poll in the papers yesterday saying that a large percentage of Tory voters think that the Conservatives have just been too soft in their strategy so far in tackling this. What actually are their options?
Well, look, I think the Home Secretary has been fighting on three fronts in trying to deal with this situation. She is having to deal with our own civil service and the intransigence that she has seen in it. She's dealing with the border force, who, let's face it, border force, the clue should be in the name. And she's also having to deal with the French, who, of course, President Macron seems to be in no mood to uphold his own agreements, for example, from July this year, to prevent 100% of these crossings. Of course, the easiest solution is to take away the pull factor of these illegal crossings, and that is simply to process people offshore. Of course, anyone who wants to reach safety or refuge surely wants to secure their surroundings and environment and their life and their livelihoods. And of course, the number of safe countries that these people are passing through, surely one would think that they would be seeking refuge and safety even in France itself.
You had to go at the border force there, and I'm just wondering, what on earth can they do? if you don't process, and the problem seems to be, it's all very well saying process them, we're not processing anybody. Hence the backlog, hence everybody saying, well, let's get on a boat because once we're there, nothing will happen to us. If we process these asylum seekers and those that were justifiably seeking asylum, we got them working, got them earning money, paying tax, then that's fine. Others who weren't justified, we sent away. Wouldn't that solve the problem?
Well, you see, that's the thing. The legalities that surround the Home Secretary in terms of, the civil service, the legalities that she faces from, what she has herself described as activist lawyers chasing around bogus asylum seekers. Well, look, the simple fact is, once you reach the UK shoreline, the likelihood of you being, if you fail in your asylum bid, or being deported to your country of origin is literally zero. After all, how do you prove someone is from a particular place when there is nothing to prove that they are from a particular place and then getting that country to agree to take them back? So that's why I think the processing, A, has to be offshore, and B, it has to be swift, and C, I think when that starts happening, it will already act as the biggest deterrent that can be provided to tackle this crisis.
Process isn't happening, though.
That's the thing, and it has to happen overseas. It has to happen offshore, and that is something I think
it doesn't matter. Surely it doesn't matter where it happens. You just want the process to happen. You could set up a.
It does. It really does matter because the biggest pull factor is economics. These are mostly failed asylum seekers from the likes of Germany, from the likes of Italy, from the likes of France, and a lot of these people are trying their hands at the UK.
Yeah, but wherever they're processed, you send them back to wherever it's agreed they're sent back to.
Well, that's the thing. How do you get countries to agree to take back people who you can't prove where they have come from or where their origins are? And that's why they have to be processed offshore, so that the whole idea that once you get to the UK mainland, you will be there for life, no matter what happens. That is the pull that has to be removed.
Don't we have an international responsibility not to land our issues on someone like Albania, to sort out our process first, and then we can talk in those terms? But at the moment, we're falling at the first hurdle. We're just not getting these people through the system.
On the contrary, Simon, I would say that UK upholds its international responsibilities more so than our European neighbours, for example. I mean, look at how both our government and the British people were absolutely enthusiastic to help our Afghan friends when the Pakistan-backed Taliban took over Afghanistan a few months ago now. Look at how the UK government has spent billions helping displaced people in Syria. Look at our UK aid program. We are doing more than others. This responsibility primarily falls on the rich countries in the Middle East, be it the UAE, be it the Saudis. So the Saudis had enough. They've just given $3 billion to the failing Pakistani regime. If they've got enough money to hand over to a nuclear-armed rogue regime, I think they've got enough money to look after people around them. And that's where this responsibility falls. I don't think displacing people further than they already are in their own regions is a good idea.
How likely do you actually think it is in practice that we would enforce some kind of Australian-style system?
I think that is exactly the type of system that we need. The Australians had this issue. And again, look, this is about protecting vulnerable people.
In practice, do you think that's something that the UK government would actually successfully pursue and then implement?
I think that is exactly the type of deterrent that the UK government must pursue. And I think it's quite likely that it will end up happening.
OK, thank you very much for joining us on the programme today. Appreciate your insight. And we know lots of people are getting in touch this morning on specifically this issue.
In fact, I just want to put this to you. Has he gone? Let's bring him back, because I just want to put this to you, that Kevin has messaged in saying, I think it's a good idea to put them in army barracks while we return these people. We're putting them in a hotel. That's a huge waste of money. There is a real anger, and this is, it seems only now are people appreciating how angry people have been about this for an awfully long time. It's not a case of don't let them in. It's let's process them. Those that are entitled to stay in the country, let's speed this process up. Those that aren't, they need to be rehomed in their country of origin. And I don't understand which bit of that is a problem.
Well, the bit of that is, look, again, on three fronts. A, the civil service. You know, the civil service in this country, be it Brexit, be it this issue, has been hidebound. It's been intransigent that it simply does not want to do what the will of the public is, what the will of the people is, what the will of the government is. And that is something that Priti Patel has had to fight.
So you agree that is the answer? You're explaining why it's not happening, but what everybody seems to want is answers. If there is an answer there...
The second part of that, of course, is to get the French to agree to actually honour what they've agreed, and that is take back people who have failed their asylum bids here. And they're simply not doing that either. So that's why it falls back to, again, offshore these people, so it acts as a deterrent so that this is not happening in the first place.
Right, well, we're there. We'll be talking about this, I'm sure, again. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Good to talk to you.
Amandeep Bhogal, really appreciate your time. Now, coming up here on the programme, Christmas is coming. It's looming. And with Black Friday coming up this week, we'll take a look at what you need to know so you don't fall for a scam.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Well, welcome back to the Great British Breakfast. It's coming up to 20 minutes to 8. This Friday, it's Black Friday. I'm sure you've been inundated with messages about it already, where shops, online retailers will tell you they've slashed prices on their stocks just for the day. But we know to be aware of bargains that look too good to be true. Last Christmas, over 28,000 shoppers were conned out of their money when shopping online, losing over £15 million in total to scams.
Laura Retty is a personal finance expert from Financial Specialist 71A. She joins us now. Laura, good morning.
Good morning.
It's a hell of a lot of money.
It is a huge amount of money, and unfortunately Black Friday does tend to be a time of year that these scammers spring into action. There were millions of pounds spent on Black Friday in this country last year, and with the money flowing from one wallet to another, unfortunately cyber criminals will unfortunately look for a way to get a piece of that. Although scammers obviously work year round, Black Friday does prove to be particularly lucrative because the psychology often is with retailers. You have to do things in a rush because the bargains won't stick around for long, so shoppers aren't as focused or perhaps as cautious as usual, especially online.
We know this though, don't we? So why is it that every year we get tricked again?
I know it's very, very frustrating. It's because the scammers have become so sophisticated in what they're doing. I've actually been scammed myself before. What happens is fraudsters put out elaborate websites to trick you into spending money on products you'll never receive. So you may receive text messages, calls or emails claiming you're eligible for a refund for an item you've never purchased, just so that these can then get you to reveal your card information or things like your mother's maiden name and date of birth. Often the problem is as well is that these things happen maybe this time of year, and then they'll wait for weeks before they actually contact you. So it slips your mind to think, oh, actually, is this connected with that site that I wasn't sure about? So they've become just increasingly more sophisticated, which is why a lot of people are falling prey to this.
What do you look out for?
There's several things that you can do. So first of all, when you're shopping online, there's some ways that you can check that a website's legit. So first of all, if you see a bargain that you think, oh, it's too good to be true, it normally is. So have a look to see where you can find this bargain elsewhere. And if it's sort of close to a different price or you're aware of the website, then go for it. But if it's a website you've never looked for before, you've never seen before, check the contact page. There should be an address and some customer service phone numbers to call. If there is an absence of that, then there's normally a red flag there. Also, review the company's social media, check that they've got a Facebook website, go on to Facebook, check that they're actually there and that they are legit. Also look up reviews on Google and Trustpilot, because if people have been scammed before, they will absolutely write about that there. Also, you can look up the domain age and whether a site is secure in the URL. So there are different ways to do that when you're actually using a website. But also, if you get contacted via email or text, asked to click on a link, things like that, those are red flags. And I would really recommend that if it's a bank or somebody that you're familiar with trying to get in contact with you, you contact them first. Don't sort of click on links and things like that on text and emails, because normally they will take you through to a fake site that might look like it's the real site, but actually it's a phishing site.
We've just had a message in from Paul, who says, if people just went to the shop in person, this wouldn't happen. There must be other ways to try and protect yourself rather than physically having to go into store.
Yeah, unfortunately, that would be, best case scenario is everybody goes back into the high street, and obviously that would help save a lot of retailers and independents. And the thing is, at this time of year, Black Friday isn't the only time to get a bargain. So obviously you can go on Boxing Day is often a good time. The next 2 weeks, really, it doesn't just have to be all on Friday. There's lots of bargains out there. So do keep your eyes peeled, and just make sure if you get a phone call from your bank, either dial 159, so that's across your phone like that, which is the scam fraud protection line, if you think you're in the middle of a scam, and just make sure that if you're talking to somebody who pretends to be from their bank, just quickly ask yourself, is this person likely to be from my bank? If not, just hang up and call them back.
It's fascinating, this. I'm just, people who fall for these scams, I mean, is there an average person that falls from, or is this just across the board? Because some of the figures suggesting, surprisingly perhaps, that it's younger people who seem to be falling for these.
Yeah, the figures released this morning suggest that actually there's a lot of younger people. It's because they're looking for certain tech like Xboxes, those kinds of electronics, where they're trying to find them at a bargain price. The scammers are so sophisticated these days that it isn't just vulnerable or the elderly customers that it used to be. It's across the board. As I say myself, I've actually been scammed myself. This was a couple of years ago where I thought that I was buying some bargain shampoo on a website, and actually it was a website that was a complete fake website, but it looked very legit. And then a few weeks later, I got a call from somebody pretending to be from my bank saying, we see that you've made this purchase. We think it's a scam. Can we just verify a few details? I was halfway in the middle of verifying details, and I suddenly thought, hang on a minute, I don't actually know that this is the person that they're pretending to be. And when I questioned them, they hung up. And I immediately called my bank. And yes, they'd taken £80 out of my account and put it into Bitcoin. So it's very, very easy to think that something's legit, especially if you get somebody on the phone telling you they're from the bank and, they sound very, very legit. So it is across the board. Nobody's really safe anymore, which is why you've got to be so especially careful this time of year.
But you got your shampoo in the end.
I didn't, no. I went and actually bought it on the high street in the end. Sorry?
Good. No,
you get your
that's
money
fine.
back? Yes, I did get my money back, yes. Luckily, my bank could see that it was a scam and I was able to prove it was a scam so that my bank did refund me, yes.
Well, good advice. Black Friday, just a few days away. And then we got Christmas. Oh, it's really nice to see you. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thanks.
It's 7:45. You're with Simon and Rosie on the Great British Breakfast. Now, private parking bosses have raised concerns over the government's plans to reduce the cap on parking fines from £100 to £50. These plans, which aim to tackle rogue private parking companies, if implemented, would bring private fines in line with local authorities and give drivers the chance to reduce their fines if they pay promptly.
Well, now, the British Parking Association said in August that 67% of firms in the sector could be insolvent within 2 years. Let's talk to Andrew Pester, who's Chief Executive of the British Parking Association. Andrew, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Not going to be a lot of sympathy out there for you, is there, on this?
The key rationale for the government's proposals is to drive consistency and standards across the sector, and we as a British Parking Association absolutely are supportive of the Parking Code of Practice Act and the measures that it's seeking to introduce, and that is a single code, a single standard setting body for auditing of the accredited trade associations, and also an independent appeal service. And all of those elements are to drive motorist confidence in the sector as we move forward. The key concern that we have is that for that package of measures to be sustainable, there needs to be a sufficient deterrent able to allow us all to go about our daily lives and for places to be accessible and not congested. And as always, this is about the majority of motorists go about and comply with the rules as advertised in private parking car parks, and this is about the minority and trying to tackle better those selfish parking behaviours.
Suitable deterrent, what would be suitable?
What we've said to government is that level has to be transparent, proportionate and fair to the motorist, and it also has to drive compliance with the rules. And until we know the specific details of the regime that the government will put in place and the detail of that and the costs, it's not possible to say the specific level at this stage, but it's something we're really keen to work with government on.
Well, hang on a minute. It would bring private car parks into line with local authorities, give offending motorists a chance to reduce fines to £25 if paid promptly. You're having a go at motorists. This isn't about the motorists. This is about how car parks, some of them, you must admit, some of them have been overcharging for a long time, and that is what they're trying to stop.
So this is about the key aim of the reforms is about protecting motorists and making sure that places are accessible for the motorist. What we are looking to achieve is that. Sorry, can you repeat the question? The last bit.
Yeah, well, my question is quite simply, motorists have been clobbered by private car parking firms for a long time. This is being brought in to try and level that playing field. You're having a go at motorists, saying it's they who are being selfish, when many people are going to say, hang on a minute, we've been overcharged for a long time. Now you're being brought into line with local authorities, and that should be fair. And what is your complaint about that?
So I think the local authority parking operates differently to the private parking sector. Local authority parking is under statutory authority and laid out as such. The private parking sector is based on contract law, and so consequently the two regimes are legally different. Operationally and structurally, they're poles apart as well, and so aligning them is inconsistent. What we need to make sure, and pivotedly, is that the level of the charge it drives compliance with the rules. And that compliance is so important. We recently undertook some research, consumer insight research, with 3,000 adults across the UK, and one of the key findings from that is that the majority of motorists and their strongest feelings are in relation to the unsafe and inconsiderate parking behaviour of others, and the need to tackle that. And these measures will help to move positively forward on that basis.
Well, it's good of you to join us, Andrew Pest. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
It is 10 minutes to 8. You're here with the Great British Breakfast. Well, coming up on the programme, the search for Manchester United's new manager. To the latest, also in sports news, the search for the missing Chinese tennis player. All of that to come after the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to the day's weather, and the UK is looking largely dry with plenty of sunshine. The far north will be cloudier. Let's take a look at the details. In the southwest, it's going to continue to see lots of sunshine during the rest of the day. It's going to be a little bit warmer than yesterday, highs possibly of 10 degrees Celsius. Let's go to the southeast. It's going to be dry, sunny, but cold though. Coastal areas may see some showers throughout the day, highs there about 10 degrees. Let's go to Wales. Also going to be the odd shower near the coast. Otherwise, it's going to be cold and sunny. The sun will also shine across the Midlands during the rest of the day. We'll move over there. Very little cloud in the sky. Despite the sun, though, it is also going to be cold. At Birmingham, 8 degrees today, getting colder as the week goes on. Northern England now, the best of the sunshine is going to be in the west, and some clouds affecting eastern coast throughout the day. The top temperature is about 6 degrees. Could even get to 8. Southern Scotland, they're also going to see some sunshine, but further north it will be rather cloudy with some spells of rain. It's going to be milder here, though, with highs of, 7 degrees in Edinburgh, but could be up to 10. The north coast of Northern Ireland is also going to be rather cloudy during Monday, but elsewhere back into the sunshine with highs of 9 degrees Celsius. Much of the UK then is going to hold on to clear skies as we approach dusk, leading to a chilly evening. And that's how the weather's shaping up for the rest of the day.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Hello, welcome back. It is 7:53, which is 6 minutes to 8. Now, a leading head teacher has asked adults to stop mocking young people by calling them woke for standing up for things they believe in. Samantha Price, president of the Girls' School Association, is urging adults to share the concerns of students regarding issues of racism, sexism and climate change, instead of using the term woke even to criticise or demean them.
She says times have changed. Instead of shutting down discussions on these topics, older generations need to keep up with the younger generation and their language and concerns. Does she have a point?
Not to me.
We kind of need to speak to and hear from people who've been accused of being called woke, who find it rather frustrating and I'm sure quite irritating if what they're trying to do is, you know, tell someone about a cause they're really passionate in. They just want to be respected, I expect.
It's the point about young people, though, and young people who perhaps haven't lived life, seen what goes on in the real world, picking a particular cause and then saying the adults are all wrong, can wind people up. But
so maybe both sides need to have a slightly more empathetic approach.
This is why you should go into counselling.
I don't think I'd be very good at that. I'm not a very patient person, actually.
No, I know that. I know
yes,
that.
So I
if
think
only you knew.
I would struggle. But that
don't fall for this butter wouldn't melt act.
Yeah, very rude of you, Simon. So that's interesting. I think the younger people, because I think they can be more combative and more argumentative and less open to other people's ideas, and maybe the older people should just maybe take the time to listen and talk.
OK. Let's move on.
Sport now.
GB Views at GB News, if you agree with Rosie. Now, Manchester United have approached Zinedine Zidane about becoming their manager, but according to sources close to the former Real Madrid boss, he is not interested in going to Old Trafford at this point.
According to sources, he's not keen on a move to United right now. He has been linked with the French national side and Paris Saint-Germain and would reportedly prefer to consider those options when or if they become available. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was sacked yesterday after Saturday's 4-1 defeat at Watford.
The Chinese tennis player Peng Shuai has told the International Olympic Committee president she's safe and well and wants her privacy respected. The comments during a video call come after footage of the Wimbledon doubles champion was posted by Chinese state media on Twitter. The player disappeared 3 weeks ago after she made sexual assault allegations against a former Chinese government official.
We're joined now by sports broadcaster Rupert Bell to discuss the weekend's biggest sports stories. Let's start then with Manchester United. If it looks like the people they're offering out the position to aren't keen right now, who could take charge?
Well, it's I think that Pochettino is the man that they probably are looking for, but not until the summer. I mean, it's a sorry state of affairs for Manchester United. When you've seen other clubs take pretty quick action and decisive action, you know, Tottenham as a case in point, getting Conte, they wanted him in the summer, that didn't work out, got rid of Nuno, then bring him in, they have a win yesterday. Manchester United spent the last few weeks prevaricating. Then they have the absolute shocker on Saturday against Watford, and then they had no choice but to get rid of him because the team were absolutely useless. You can't sugarcoat it any other way. And when you think the quality of the stars, I'm afraid Solskjaer had to be a goner, and he was. So what? But it looks as if they haven't really got anybody in mind. So Michael Carrick is going to step up from being backroom boy to now being a caretaker manager, but that could be for the rest of the season. So until the summer, Manchester United fans, I think, are going to just endure what could be a pretty difficult time unless Carrick has got a magic wand and can get the players to look as if they're a united force.
And Pochettino, he's quite happy at PSG, isn't he?
Yes, he is, but I think the lure of Manchester United. But the problem with Manchester United is since Sir Alex Ferguson has gone, this great big, shadow looms over the club, and they haven't really managed to sort of shred the sort of Sir Alex Ferguson era. And it's obviously all talked about that he was one of the reasons why Ronaldo came back to Manchester United. So he's still such a looming presence in terms of just being around the place. And everyone looks back. It's very similar to the sort of Busby era, such a dominant force. And it took Manchester United a long time to regroup. And so they're in the same scenario. But Pochettino, clearly talented manager. But if they got to wait till the summer, then what were they doing? Where was their planning? When you see that Aston Villa found quickly with Steven Gerrard, you see Norwich moved very quickly, decisive. United, like their play at the moment, seem all over the place.
Rupert, let's move to the tennis quickly if we can, and Peng Shuai. It's been a really difficult story to follow over the last 3 weeks, shrouded in suspicion, really. How do you feel? Do you feel convinced of her safety now?
I just feel cynical about the IOC interview. Now, I'm sure, yes, she says she's fit and well, but of course the Winter Olympics are going to China this year, and so clearly the IOC want to see that everything is all right and that she's fit and well. So until I think we need to see more evidence that she's able to basically go about her business unencumbered by the Chinese state trying to control everything, I think generally sport is still very uneasy, because there is a bit of cynicism about the IOC, because clearly they want to protect their asset, which is the Winter Olympics.
Rupert, it's always good to see you. We're out of time, but look forward to seeing you again soon. Rupert Bell, thank you very much. Hello, very good morning. It is 8 o'clock on Monday, the 22nd of November. These are the stories that matter to you and to us on the Great British Breakfast with Simon McCoy and Rosie Wright.
There's growing rage across Europe as COVID-19 restrictions are tightened again. This as our Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, plays down the threat of fresh restrictions here. Are you worried we could be next? You can get in touch with us. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Christmas parade horror. At least 5 people have been killed, many injured after a car crashes into a Christmas parade in a US city in Milwaukee. We'll bring you the latest on that investigation.
Mourners will pay their respects to the MP Sir David Amess at a funeral service in his Southend West constituency. He was stabbed to death at a local surgery last month. There's going to be another service of remembrance in Westminster for him tomorrow.
Fulfilling her duties as a great-grandmother, the Queen attends a rare double christening at Windsor after nearly a month's absence from royal duties after there were concerns about her health.
Zinedine Zidane is reportedly out of the race to become Manchester United's next manager. Why has the French superstar turned down the job?
A top head teacher is warning that labelling students woke could lead to them giving up on campaigns. We'll explain what that fuss is about.
Now, violence continued across Europe for a third day in a row as protesters fight back against new COVID restrictions. To give you an overview, in Brussels, riot police were forced to use water cannon and tear gas against demonstrators opposed to the introduction of COVID passes there, and also they've got plans for mandatory vaccines. In the Netherlands, a 3-week partial lockdown was imposed after a record spike in COVID cases, and riots broke out in Rotterdam on Saturday, where police fired gunshots. On Sunday, fireworks and rocks were held at police in The Hague.
Finally, tens of thousands of people protested in Austria's capital, Vienna, after the government there announced a new national lockdown and plans to make jabs compulsory in February 2022.
Professor Paul Moss is a professor of haematology at the University of Birmingham and the leader of the UK Coronavirus Immunology Consortium. Sorry for bungling that. Very good morning to you. I think one of the real concerns in the UK is we can see this wave of coronavirus going across Europe, and obviously people are really worried about it. Could that wave come to us in the same way?
We're thinking not at the current time. As you know, we've run quite a lot of infections for quite a few months now, actually, but they're relatively stable. And so we're hopeful that particularly with the introduction of the booster vaccines, which seem incredibly important, surprisingly effective, to be honest. So if we can get those in quickly, then we should be okay. And as you know, we've already got about 13 million boosters delivered. I think that is the key.
Professor, there is a view that we've already had that fourth wave, that we had it some weeks ago. And at the moment, I mean, God willing, we seem to be just about managing. I mean, the NHS is always under huge pressure, but at the moment we seem to be okay.
I think we're managing just about, but as you say, it's very tough, not just through the COVID, but also the burden of people presenting with conditions which they haven't in the last 18 months, of course. But yes, we've had this chronic wave, if you like, of high levels of infection, 30, 40,000 a day, as you know, for many, many weeks. But there's no indication yet that it's taking off so rapidly as we've seen in some of the countries in Europe, Austria, Belgium, where it's really quite dramatic.
So we're holding on to the current plan. Just explain what the details are and what would have to change for the government to change strategy here too.
I think we've got a number of platforms coming into place to control the COVID, of course. I mean, we've got early testing, which is working well. We've got new antiviral drugs coming through. That's slightly down the line, but it adds some protection for people who are most vulnerable. But the cornerstone remains vaccines. And one of the surprising things, actually, is the efficacy of these boosters, because we knew that 2 vaccine doses were great, and most of us have had those too. But when you have 3, the protection against symptomatic infection is going up to 93%, which we never even saw with the 2. It's almost as if this vaccine needs 3 doses to be a true course. So I'd really urge everybody to get that booster vaccine.
Because on top of the surprise at the effectiveness of the booster was perhaps the surprise at the speed of the waning effect of that second jab.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question. These are 2 new vaccine platforms, and I think we're seeing that the antibody levels do drop off after the vaccines. And there was some modest booning, particularly against infection. So the AZ dropped to around 44% from 66, and Pfizer also down to around 70%. What they're both good at, and you'll know this, is they're great against serious infection and death. And there is evidence that those really important attributes are being maintained much better.
Why is it that some people just haven't got their booster jab, they're eligible for it, and for some reason it's not top of the priority list?
I do wonder if actually we felt that we believe that the 2 courses was a standard dose of vaccination. It's working very well. It provides very good protection against death, 90%. And perhaps people thought, well, you know, we perhaps don't need the booster. I'm protected. Let's wait and see. But I think with this evidence coming through with how super it is and the takeoff of cases in Europe and also continuing cases in the UK, we really should be taking it now.
What if someone's watching you now thinking, well, I've had my 2 jabs, what would you say to them? I mean, you've said it already, but to someone directly watching you now who's having second thoughts about it, how would you persuade them that it's worth doing?
I think it's really for the person themselves and also for society for themselves. It's likely to give you, well, it will give you increased protection against not just infection, which can be nasty, but serious infection, hospitalization. So it's personally beneficial. And also for society, I think what the 3rd booster is doing is reducing infection, and that will reduce spread. And therefore, if we maintain our freedoms as we have at the current time, then it's a great thing to do altruistically.
Just anecdotally, I've been hearing lots of people in their 20s and 30s having coronavirus and only really identifying it when they've taken a test. How do you feel we're doing with the testing now? People obviously are going around without symptoms, but I'm sure spreading it.
It's always been a feature of this condition, hasn't it, that many people do get it asymptomatically. There's a new Delta Plus variant that's just at a low level and not taking off, but that might give more asymptomatic infections as well. So you're absolutely right. People do need to continue to test. And this is one reason, of course, that some people say we should continue wearing masks because there is asymptomatic infection. But at the moment, as we say, overall cases are broadly stable.
Very briefly, when you look at those pictures of rioting in Europe, I mean, what goes through your mind?
Well, I mean, that is a political decision, isn't it, really, about how you mandate vaccines. We've had a very liberal approach in the UK. It's up to you. Austria is the most extreme case now, isn't it, from where everybody will have to have a vaccine. I think it's a question for each country, society and politically, about how they manage this. It's very sad to see, I must say.
Much closer to home, you see the Prime Minister on a train, not wearing a mask. How helpful are those optics?
I think it's very sensible to wear a mask on public transport, to be honest, and in hospitals. So we must all do our part to maintain that confidence.
Paul, thank you ever so much for talking to us. Paul Moss, Professor of Haematology at the University of Birmingham and leader of the UK Coronavirus Immunology Consortium. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Well, let's have a look at what else is going on today. And in America, at least 5 people have been killed, dozens more injured after a car crashed into a Christmas parade in a city in Milwaukee. The city's police chief confirmed there were some fatalities and that at least 40 people were injured. In a press briefing, he told journalists that a person of interest is now in custody.
Well, in the UK, mourners here will be paying their respects to the MP Sir David Amess at a funeral service and a procession in his Southend West constituency. He was stabbed to death while holding a constituency surgery at a Methodist church in Leigh-on-Sea in October. Sir David was a devout Catholic. His friend and colleague, Mark Francois, will deliver a eulogy today at a private ecumenical service at St Mary's Church in Prittlewell. Tomorrow there's going to be a requiem mass held at Westminster Cathedral in London, and there'll be a message from the Pope that will be shared with the congregation.
Double child killer Colin Pitchfork was recalled to jail after he reportedly approached teenage women in the street in a string of incidents. According to the Daily Mail, the 61-year-old appeared to be trying to establish a connection with them. The revelations have sparked calls for urgent reform to the parole board, which controversially released Pitchfork despite warnings he remained a danger to the public. He was jailed for life after raping and strangling 15-year-olds Linda Mann and Dawn Ashworth in Leicestershire in 1983 and 1986. He was released in September.
Now, the taxi driver who survived the Liverpool terror attack says it's a miracle he's alive. David Perry described the bombing outside the Liverpool Women's Hospital as an evil act. He said he's thankful no one else was injured. He and his wife Rachel also thanked the public for their amazing generosity following the blast on Remembrance Sunday.
Chinese tennis player Peng Shuai has told the International Olympic Committee president she's safe and well and wants her privacy respected. The comments during a video call come after footage of the Wimbledon doubles champion was posted by Chinese state media on Twitter. The player disappeared 3 weeks ago after she made sexual assault allegations against a former Chinese government official.
And some entertainment news for you. Adele has persuaded Spotify to remove the shuffle button as the default option on album pages, so it automatically plays now in the artist's own order. Well, Adele's 4th studio album, 30, launched on Friday to widespread critical acclaim. She thanked the streaming giant on Twitter, saying, "Our art tells a story, and our story should be listened to as we intended. Thank you, Spotify, for listening."
And in sports news, Manchester United have approached Zinedine Zidane about becoming their manager, but according to sources close to the former Real Madrid boss, he's not interested in going to Old Trafford at this point. According to those sources, Zidane is not keen on a move to United right now. He has been linked with the French national side and Paris Saint-Germain and would reportedly prefer to consider those options when, or indeed if, they become available. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was sacked yesterday after Saturday's 4-1 defeat at Watford.
And no one's really celebrating Watford. I mean, great for Watford.
Great for Watford.
Yeah.
Good old Watford.
Let's look at the weather. Today we'll see a chilly but mostly sunny day for much of England and Wales, but thicker cloud and a few spots of rain are going to push in across northern Scotland. The eastern coast may see an odd shower too.
Now, the race is on to electrify vehicles by 2030, and at the heart of the government plan is to develop gigafactories in the UK that will supply batteries to vehicles. Coventry Airport is one site that's been considered, and earlier this year the Prime Minister and Business Secretary expressed their support for its development. However, some local businesses will be forced to relocate, are objecting.
Let's find out more. Our West Midlands reporter Balvinder Sidhu joins us now live from Coventry. Bal, explain, not everyone's happy.
That's right. I'm joined by Steve Clark. He's a business owner at Coventry Airport. He's been here for 20 years. He says this is not the best site to build this gigafactory. Why is that, Steve?
Basically, the airport is part of the national UK infrastructure for transport, and we need to keep these precious regional airports going. There will never be another airport built in the UK, and so to destroy an airport on the hope that perhaps a gigafactory is going to be built here in the future, when at the moment it's all speculative, is a mad idea. The gigafactory should be built on a brownfield site.
I mean, look, we've got Birmingham International down the road. A gigafactory is going to bring thousands of jobs to the area. Surely it's a no-brainer.
We have no problem with the concept of a gigafactory and all the jobs it's going to bring, but there is no need to destroy a perfectly viable airport that brings businesses and international travellers, particularly business travel, into here. We want to support the West Midlands with business travel, and we also want to work with industry. But what could happen is we'll end up with no gigafactory and no airport, and that would be a disaster, and so it should be built elsewhere.
So the Civil Aviation Authority have also objected to this airport being closed to make way for a gigafactory because there's an air ambulance just behind me preparing to take off. This site isn't just used for local businesses, it is the home of Warwickshire Northamptonshire Air Ambulance. But the City Council, along with the owners of the airport, have put in planning permission, and they say that this site is the best site for this gigafactory.
Coventry Airport is located very close to Birmingham International Airport. It's a very niche airport. Yes, there are a couple of hundred jobs on the site. They're important. We're working with those companies and want to see what we can do to support them going forward. But we're talking about potentially 6,000 direct jobs on this site, with 3 times that in the supply chain. It's important because Coventry is located in the heart of the automotive sector in our country. 50,000 jobs rely on the automotive sector here. A third of all vehicles that are built in this country are built in this region. And if we don't help them to electrify and look to the future, we will lose all those jobs.
So the Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, it's reported that he has also been giving public funding to the advisory board to the Civil Aviation Authority, who are also objecting to this site being developed into a gigafactory. And in response, the Department of Transport have said that he is committed to supporting all forms of transport, including the development of gigafactories, as the government, are racing ahead to electrify all vehicles by 2030. However, all new developments need to be assessed against existing transport provision, and the Transport Secretary is aware that the local council is considering users of the airfield in their assessment of this site being appropriate. Now, the planning permission was submitted in July. This gigafactory really needs to be up and running in the next 3 to 4 years if they are going to be meeting their target. The government are going to be meeting their target to electrify all vehicles by 2030. So they were hoping that planning permission would have been approved by now. That hasn't happened, so it remains to be seen if that will be the case.
Balvinder, thank you ever so much, speaking to us there live from Coventry, with more on this across the day as well. Now, it's just gone 8:15 here on GB News.
Let's look ahead to lunchtime here on GB News, because Gloria De Piero is presenting a special series of interviews, The Real Me, where she meets the person behind the politics. And if you haven't come across it yet, do check it out on the GB News app or on our YouTube channel. In the latest Real Me, coming up later today, Gloria talks to Shadow Health Secretary Jonathan Ashworth.
She said, "I'm sorry." And I said, "He's dead, isn't he?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "What was it?" And she said, almost matter-of-factly, but not in a cruel way, and I don't blame her for it, this woman, she said, "You do know your dad was an alcoholic, don't you?" And of course I knew. Of course I knew I'd grown up with it. But to hear those words said out loud in that way, it just sort of, it's like a punch in the stomach, or I don't know, a slap round the face, or like a ton of bricks that come down on me. Yeah, and he was, 60? It's no age, is it?
It's an extremely raw interview, very powerful, and if you want to watch it, you can see it in full on Gloria's show, The Briefing, today at 12 o'clock on GB News.
You're watching The Great British Breakfast. Now, coming up on the programme, the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children has reported a worrying increase in the number of calls reporting sexual abuse against children. We'll look into more on that story. That's after this weather update.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Let's take a look to today's weather, and the UK is looking largely dry with plenty of sunshine, although the far north will be cloudier. Let's take a look at the details. The southwest is going to continue to see lots of sunshine during the rest of the day. It's going to feel warmer than yesterday with highs possibly 9-10 degrees Celsius. Across the southeast, it's going to be dry, sunny, but cold for many. Many coastal areas, though, are going to see some showers throughout the day. Let's move over to Wales, and there's the odd stray shower near the coast here as well. Otherwise, it's sort of the same as everywhere else. It's going to be very cold but sunny. It's going to shine that sun across the Midlands for the rest of the day as well, with very little cloud in the sky. It's going to look beautiful. Now, despite the sun, it's going to be cold, highs of 8 degrees Celsius. Moving into northern England now, the best of the sunshine is going to be across the west here, with some shower clouds affecting eastern coast throughout the day. Top temperatures of around 6, could be 8 degrees. It's going to get a little bit warmer as the week goes on. Let's look in at southern Scotland. Also going to have that sunshine. Further north, though, we just saw that it's going to be quite cloudy. Edinburgh's going to be quite cold, highs of 7 degrees today. The rest of Scotland could be a little warmer. The north coast of Northern Ireland is also going to be rather cloudy during Monday. Elsewhere, it should be back into the sunshine with highs of 9 degrees Celsius. Much of the UK will then hold on to clear skies as we approach dusk, leading into a chilly evening.
Brr.
That is how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage. I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Hello, 22 minutes past 8. You're watching The Great British Breakfast with Rosie and Simon. Good morning to you. Now, the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children has said that the number of people contacting the charity about child sexual abuse has hit a record level. Calls have increased by roughly 36% since last year, which some are attributing to a surge in publicity about sexual violence against women and girls. 60% of these calls concerned abuse that had taken place more than 6 months earlier.
Marilyn Hawes joins us now, CEO and founder of Freedom from Abuse, a charity aiming to reduce child sex abuse. Thank you so much for joining us. These reports make for very, very difficult reading. What is it that you think is driving this, we have to call it a really sharp increase in the number of people who need help?
Well, it's a pandemic of its own, isn't it? And of those figures, 70% is still not reported, so it's infinitely higher than that. I mean, COVID won't have helped, and lockdown for sure. During April and June last year, in the first 3 months of lockdown, the police were getting 200 calls a day from children reporting sexual abuse within the family. historic abuse is more than 1 year. And I know girls and women are a far higher percentage of abuse, but what really does concern me is we are never talking about the boys. There are plenty of boys that are also sexually abused. My 3 boys were in the school that they attended. And the problem is the system the system protects the system. There is no cohesion. So I go into schools, we are actually teaching children. When we go into schools, and I'm working with the Department of Education, that teachers are, I wasn't teaching, they are restricted, if you like. If you think that is the line of where you're talking about these sort of issues in school, teachers will hover below that because they are restricted by the fact they're teachers and what they can actually say. We go into a school and we go over the line and take the children further and deeper, and we get amazing results. And that's not what's happening. I mean, every school I go in, the first thing I say is, how do you get on with children's services in your area or social services? And you just get an eye roll. And what happens is they're perfectly intelligent people, teachers. They suspect, they guess, they know, they report it, and then they're told it doesn't meet our threshold. So, there's this massive gap. We are consistently failing children. Nobody wants to open the can of reality. We need mandatory reporting because at the moment we've got statutory guidance. Well, that's just hope and a prayer that you're going to do something. The worst you'll get is a black mark against your name if you don't report it. But also what's not happening is the schools and society is not looking at why do people abuse. I've gone into prisons, I've spoken to sex offenders and child abusers, and without exception, they all had issues in their early years of trauma of one sort or another. That for some, not all, of course not all, but for some, when they went into school, even in infants, that started as overly sexualized behaviors. It was written off by social services as child's play. Then that goes into primary school. Then that goes into overly sexualized behaviors. You see it time and time again. And you cannot take away the issue of the negative impact of social media and pornography.
OK, but Marilyn, if, as you were saying, that increase of 36% during a time partly of lockdown, partly of people being at home, therefore, as you say, more than likely that it's within the family. You're talking about the very people who are there to look after the children who you are then saying should be complaining. They're not going to. It's the people that trust most that are abusing them.
Mandatory reporting is about the people in the schools, the higher management, the senior management. And yes, you're right, they're not going to report. So we will push on children. Boys find it incredibly difficult to speak about this stuff. My lads did. But you have to have mandatory reporting for the people that are in senior management in schools, so they can't brush it away under the table. But this has gone on for decades. Peer-on-peer abuse. If you go to the Truth Project of the Independent Inquiry and you'll look at the percentage of peer-on-peer abuse was as bad back 30, 40, 50 years ago as it is now. And nobody is doing anything about it. I could take you to a school where I was in only last week where a boy, when he was in year 7, raped a girl in year 8. The girl in year 11 came to tell me when she was in year 8, she went to the police. She's got photographs of all the bruises. He's still stalking her. They're not in a relationship. And that boy is still in the school. Now, he's now in year 10. He needs help. And I just feel some schools are holding these youngsters until they leave the system and they're out there in society. If you don't manage these overly sexualized behaviors when they're young and in in primary school, then it could easily possibly go on to be a perpetrator of sexual abuse. The other thing that no one's listening to is, it happens time and time again. Police or social services would say, oh, the child's only 4. Oh, that can't have happened. Children under 7 cannot make this stuff up. They've either seen it or they've experienced it. And people don't know this stuff. I know from the training we do in schools, the lack of real necessary knowledge is not there. And people don't want to take the lid off the can. That's the problem. They just want to keep status quo as it is. So we hear about the numbers, we continue to put a plaster on the top. Let's give NSPCC 2.6 million to have a few more calls. Where is real prevention?
Marilyn, we could talk for far longer on this, but we've run out of time, but we will talk again.
It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking.
And it's not going away, is it? Marilyn Hawes, thank you so much for your time.
Nope.
It's coming up to 8:30 now. Today, a private ecumenical service for the murdered MP Sir David Amess is due to take place in his Southend West constituency ahead of a service at Westminster Cathedral tomorrow. The father of 5, who was stabbed to death while holding a constituency surgery at a Methodist church in Leigh-on-Sea last month, was a devout Catholic.
Well, Ellie Costello is our GB News South of England, Southeast of England reporter. She joins us from Southend. And Ellie, just talk us through what we're expecting to happen today.
Good morning, Rosie and Simon. Yes, a very emotional and a very sad day in Southend today. Their beloved MP served here for almost 25 years. He was part and parcel of living here, and he was a very familiar face on the streets around Southend. And here at St Mary's Church in Prittlewell is where that funeral service will take place at 1 p.m. today. So it is a private service. It is by invitation only, but we have heard that there's a capacity of 450 people in the church, and it is going to be full. So we know that at 12:15 today, the bells here at St Mary's Church in Prittlewell will begin to toll, and then at 1 p.m. that service will start. It's a full Catholic Mass, and then we expect that to finish at about 10 minutes past 2, and then a funeral procession will take place through the streets of Southend, and we are expecting large numbers of the public to turn out to pay their respects to Sir David Amess. This is a death that has completely shocked the community. We saw in the days following his tragic death in October, there were candlelit vigils, there was moments of silence, minutes of silence held by members of the community. There were balloons being let into the air for Sir David. So we're definitely expecting those sorts of scenes today. And of course, thoughts with his family, who were completely, of course, overcome with emotion when they went to see the flowers after Sir David's killing. We are expecting, obviously, to see them here today, and they were overcome with the outpouring of support and grief from the community here. And I'm sure they're going to be very moved by the scenes that we will be seeing in Southend today. So we know that Sir David's friend, Mark Francois, will be doing the eulogy at the Mass today. And we've also heard that the Pope is giving a special message. He has written a letter which will be read out in the service today. There was indeed a rumour that the Pope would be holding the service today. That is not the case, although that would have been pretty amazing because Sir David was such a devout Catholic. But we do know that there will be a message from the Pope. Mark Francois will be doing the eulogy, and I'm sure we're going to hear from Sir David's family as well. He leaves behind a wife and 5 children and a community that is absolutely in grief at the passing of their beloved MP.
And Ellie, there's going to be another service tomorrow at Westminster Cathedral. What do we know about that?
Yes, there's another service tomorrow at Westminster Cathedral. We hear that Anne Widdecombe will be speaking. She was a very close friend of Sir David, and we're also expecting to see Boris Johnson, Priti Patel, who was or is another Essex MP, and various other MPs who were very close friends of Sir David. He was a very popular politician, very popular cross-party politician. In the days following his death, I spoke to Wes Streeting, who is Ilford's MP. He's a Labour politician, and he just spoke so very highly of Sir David and said how loved he was in the House. So I'm sure we're going to see those scenes tomorrow for a full Requiem Mass in Westminster tomorrow for Sir David, who was a devout Catholic. And it is a very, very sad occasion, both today at the private family and friends funeral that we see today, the public procession that we'll see this afternoon in a horse-drawn carriage. It's a very East End style while, we're told, this horse-drawn carriage. Sir David was born in the east of London, so that's a very fitting tribute. And then tomorrow, that public procession in Westminster, that funeral with various politicians. It's going to be a very moving 2 days, in full respect for Sir David.
Ellie, thank you very much for that. That's Ellie Costello, and she'll be covering that story, of course, throughout the day in Southend.
Now, over the weekend, hundreds of midwives joined a nationwide protest calling on the government to do more to help people working in the profession. March with Midwives gatherings took place in more than 50 towns and cities in England, Scotland and Wales.
Our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis joins us now from Nottingham, which is one of the cities where the demonstrations took place. Will, just explain, give us the background. What were the demonstrations about?
Yes, Simon, Rosie, this is something that's been months in the making. For a long time, midwives have been talking about things that are wrong with the profession, things that are making it difficult for people to stay and have productive careers. Like you said, 50 towns and cities from Leeds, Cardiff and of course Nottingham, all across the UK, where midwives first of all spoke on social media and then spanned this large wide-scale protest. Now, why are the midwives protesting? What they were saying is that there's bullying and toxic hierarchical management systems that are stifling innovation, silencing whistleblowing and causing psychological harm. Now, while I was yesterday at the protest where there was around about 100 to 200 people, midwives, their families and people supporting their cause, I spoke to one community midwife from Nottingham, Chantel, who's worked here for 25 years, and she spoke a little bit to me about what's going wrong in the industry that she loves so much.
Midwives have just had enough. We're exhausted. The pandemic has put the tin lid basically on what we thought of as our role, and it's made us realise that actually, although we are very wanted in the community, the ability for us to do our job is being hampered. 20 years ago, when I started in the community, it was unheard of for midwives to be off with stress. People would be off with grief, or they'd had a loss of a loved one or something like that, but they would not be off with work-related stress. And that's been the biggest thing that's happened over probably about the last 5 years. We're finding a vast amount of midwives going off with work-related stress. That impacts on your family. Your family, you get home after a long day at work. Your family is the one that the people you turn to for support. Your family are always the ones that you have to say, I'm sorry, we can't do that thing this weekend because I've got to work extra. I'm being asked if I'll cover another shift. So it has a massive impact, and it's an ongoing impact. And eventually it grinds the midwife down.
Yes, the words are very powerful, the testimonies that were heard yesterday in Nottingham as well as across the country, but I think it's some of the figures that are the most shocking and really show what's going on inside of the profession. The Royal College of Midwives surveyed a large amount of midwives. 57% of those people said that they plan to leave the profession next year. Also, for student midwives, only one person out of a class of 30 continues to actually work in midwifery. So the March with Midwives group that started nationally said what they want is ministers to listen and consult an urgent review which would look at why the crisis is happening, as well as fund more students into midwifery and simply pay better, because they're saying that the low wages as well as things like short staffing create some real difficulties. Now, why this is particularly relevant to where I am in Nottingham is because there is a current review underway into maternity services in Nottingham after reports of 46 babies suffered brain damage and 19 were stillborn between 2010 and 2020. And last year, inspectors rated the maternity units in Nottingham City Hospital and QMC as inadequate. Now, a statement here from the Department for Health and Social Care. The spokesperson says that the department is committed to patient safety, eradicating avoidable harms and making the NHS the safest place in the world to give birth.
OK, well, thank you very much. That's Will Hollis there.
Now, coming up here on the programme, a proposed reduction in car parking fines could spell trouble for private parking companies. We'll look into why after this.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
It's 20 minutes to 9 here on the Great British Breakfast. Now, private parking bosses have raised concerns over the government's plans to reduce the cap on parking fines from £100 to £50.
These plans, which aim to tackle rogue private parking companies, if implemented, would bring private fines in line with local authorities and give drivers the chance to reduce their fines if they pay promptly. Now, the British Parking Association said in August that 67% of firms in the sector could be insolvent within 2 years.
Barry Siegel is a parking ticket expert and is with us this morning. Barry, what's your gut reaction? For us drivers, this is good news, isn't it?
It is good news, and in fact, it's an exaggeration because, for example, in London, the private parking fines will mirror the London figures, which are much, much higher. I am not going to hold a flag day for the parking companies. And the problem really is that the government has pointed out often that there's a lack of proper oversight for the parking companies. And I think this is a very welcome measure. And if some of the parking companies go to the wall, I won't be crying.
Yeah, boo-hoo.
Yes, Simon, I agree.
I mean, we had someone from the parking the spokesman talking to us a little earlier who seemed to think, you know, that the onus is on the motorists. These motorists who are causing, you know, potential difficulties and trouble to everybody. It's not about the motorists. It's about rogue parking operators who for years have been, well, I was going to use a word I can't, but taking money from motorists when they're not in a position to argue and to bring it in line with local authorities looks perfect sense to me.
Well, it's true. And in fact, the government said in the sort of document, it said, in response to widespread concerns about the poor practice and behaviour of some parking operators. Well, that's absolutely true. And in my experience, that's often the case. The other thing which is going to change, which parking companies don't like, is there's going to be one unified appeal service. In other words, you can appeal after your parking company's turned down your appeal. And I think that will be a very good idea. At the moment, it doesn't operate as a legal tribunal, but more as a dispute resolution service, which is totally unsatisfactory. I do hope when they bring in these appeal service that people will be able to attend or appeal via the telephone once the appeal is lodged. But this is all good news for the motorists. It's about time parking companies were put into a proper organised setup. And in fact, I think the government could do much more. But at the moment. We have to be thankful for small mercies.
Some of the car parking companies are saying is there's going to be a Carmageddon of people parking because the fines have suddenly then become more affordable. People will just choose to pay the fine as, I guess, their parking fare.
Well, they're not going to be more affordable. The lowest fine will be for the less serious breach, which will be £50, and that will be outside London. And the discount figure will be around 50% or 60%. I don't know people who just want to pay £25 to park. Who can do that? That's a lot of money. So I think it's crocodile tears from the parking companies, and I'm very much welcome this initiative of the government and hope they will actually impose even stricter restrictions at some stage.
There used to be loads of stories of private parking operators who would go and clamp cars, then charge extortionate fees. I mean, are those days coming to an end?
Well, clamping was made illegal some years ago. Interestingly enough, in Scotland it was always illegal, but in England and Wales it was okay. That's been banned, but there are still rogue operators, and in fact, there have been many, many cases where the DVLC has banned particular companies from using their service for 3 months, 6 months, sometimes longer. And what is so surprising is that, how shall I put it? Some of the directors of those companies were still involved in parking matters, shall we say. So it has got better, but it's still not very good. It's really like the Wild West. Unlike local authorities who have legal restrictions on what they can do and can't do, there are rules that they have to follow. There's a tribunal of adjudicators who are independent. The situation for private parking is just not up to that standard, and I hope eventually it will be. But at the moment, this is a good step.
Well, Barry, it's good to talk to you. That some of them are genuinely trying to run companies, and there are serious issues for some of them. But I think you and I, many motorists, will not mourn the passing of more private car companies. But anyway, nice to see you, Barry Siegel there. We've had an email.
Okay.
It says, "Good morning."
Oh, no.
It says, "Chalk and cheese these two." He's talking about you and me. "Chalk and cheese these two, but it works. Simon, a miserable git, and Rose is always smiling and laughing." Isn't that nice?
Do you think that's accurate?
Chalk and cheese. No, I don't. If only they knew what went on behind the scenes.
Yeah, if only
I'm
they
always
knew.
trying to G you up and cheer you up.
Right, well, there's only 15 minutes left of us, and then you can have something new. Let's stick with cars.
Okay.
It's been reported used car prices may finally be falling, as official guide prices have been reduced by around 1.2% across the board.
That's despite prices rising dramatically in recent years. Some car dealers report that... I'm not taking the mickey. Some car dealers reporting that customers are simply unwilling to pay such high prices anymore. One such dealer who's noticed it himself is our very own friend, Danny Kelly. Danny, good morning to you.
Good morning, guys. Great to see you. And yes, after more or less 14 or 15 months of uncontrolled price hikes, it's finally starting to, well, not plateau, but actually decrease by a rather modest 1.2%. But you're right to qualify that, Simon, because over the last 14, 15, 16 months, used car prices across the board have gone up by about 25, 30, depending on who you get your information from, even as high as 38%. Now, I don't think it's quite time to get the bunting out and to have street parties, because we're approaching a traditionally quiet time of the year anyway. But we're now starting to see at auctions cars going unsold, which 3 or 4 months ago would be unheard of. I buy my part exchanges, my main dealer part exchanges, from various auctions. One such site is Mannheim in Northampton, and last week they had 25% of their stock, or 99 cars, that went unsold. Now, that just would not have happened 6 to 8 weeks ago. The reason I think that they're going unsold, I think customers have just clocked that the cars are just too much money. I really do.
Your question, yeah?
Sorry, I didn't hear that. What was that?
I said I hadn't even asked you a question yet, and we've taken up most of your time. But I thought the whole thing was about the inability to get hold of new cars. Yeah. That new cars are in such short supply that had knocked the whole price of second-hand cars up. That's now coming to an end, is it?
No, Simon. No, it's not. There's still a difficulty in getting new cars, but customers aren't soft. Used car prices have been in the news for the last 3 or 4 months. And I always give the analogy of property. If you're thinking about buying a house to spend the rest of your life in, and if you think it's overpriced by 20%, you'll consider buying that house because over the next 30 or 40 years, that will be recouped somewhat. And also, it's a house for life. You know, there are thousands of Ford Focuses, thousands of BMWs. So I think people have realised that if they've got a mode of transport to get around in, then they're just not going to. They're not prepared to be stiffed anymore because let's face it, in 9 or 10 months or 12 months' time when new cars are plentiful, you're going to have a car that could be out of bed by 35, 40%. So I'm seeing customers, who are just getting their part exchanges MOT'd and say to themselves, you know what, I'm just not prepared to pay these prices. But if you need to buy a car, I'll give you a great example. About 4 months ago, I bought a 2017 Passat Estate, and it owed me $7,000. And I was about to do a deal and sell it to a taxi driver for $8,000. And then I thought, well, actually, I need something bigger and more economical because I'm going to go down to Cornwall a few times, and my daily run around only does 16 miles to the gallon. So I pulled out of that deal, a mutual departure from that deal, and I sold it on Saturday for £8,900, and I'd done 4,000 miles in it. So that just gives you an idea how crazy. It does seem to be that it's the United Kingdom in Europe that has had the biggest hike. France, on the other hand, has had a more modest 3.8% increase in the last 12 months. But as we know, their preferred form of transport at the moment seems to be a dinghy.
Danny. Oh. You can't do that. That's not funny. Now, we will move. Yes, you'll get...
I actually missed that entirely. Probably, thank goodness.
You've got to listen to Danny.
Can I just ask really quickly, if you wanted to buy a used car then, are you saying buy now or wait a little longer?
No. One of your colleagues at the GB studios has asked me for the last 3 months to sort her a Mini. And I've said, no, there's no way. You've got to wait 6, 8, 9 months because the prices at the moment, and again, Mini's a great example. It's not like you're trying to source a Ferrari. You know, Minis are everywhere. So long as you can get around, then my advice would be to wait. Hold fire.
Danny, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate your time.
Always good to see you.
This morning.
Well, you have to keep your wits about you.
I'm going to have to, yes. The Queen emerged from Windsor Castle yesterday to attend a rare double royal christening at the Royal Lodge in Windsor. Princess Eugenie's son August and Zara Tindall's son Lucas Philip were jointly christened in a private service yesterday with the Queen and Prince Andrew.
The Queen has been out of the public eye for nearly a month after she was told to rest following a night in hospital on the 20th of October for checks. Well, Ingrid Seward is editor-in-chief of Majesty magazine, royal biographer, and she joins us now. Ingy, good morning to you.
Good morning. Nice to speak to you.
Nice to speak to you. I'm feeling terribly ill because I was standing outside the hospital when Princess Eugenie was born, and now we're talking about the christening. Anyway, I digress. Ingrid, the Queen. The photographs that we have, I mean, she looks okay, whatever you can read in photographs, but it's positive news that she's able to go to events like this, obviously.
Well, I think the problem is what we've all done is we've kind of made out this woman to be so much younger than she is because she's, over the years, she's never given up. She's very seldom been ill. Occasionally she's indisposed with a cold. But we expect far too much of her, and she is 95. And if you ask a doctor what could be wrong with the Queen, they say, you know, we couldn't possibly comment because at that age, anything could be wrong with her or nothing could be wrong with her. And the palace aren't letting us know. And the only information we have is by seeing her. And I think that we just expect too much. I mean, I tried to think of who else I knew of 95, and I kept thinking of Sir David Attenborough. But we only see him on the television screens. We don't know, we don't know every detail of his life. I mean, he's actually a month younger than the Queen. So for someone of that age, the tiniest thing can really sort of disable them for a couple of weeks, which is obviously what's happened to Her Majesty.
Talking about the television you just mentioned, there's going to be this documentary this evening. It's proving very controversial. Just explain for anyone who isn't familiar what's in essence it's about and why the palace unhappy.
Well, gosh, you put me on the spot there. The documentary is about the princes and the press. From what I understand, it's being put out by the BBC, and the palace have asked to see a copy of it, which is perfectly normal. Or actually, they would have probably liked to be more involved when it was being made, but the BBC have refused. And so the palace decided that they would put out a statement, which is the Queen, the Prince of Wales, and the Duke of Cambridge together, saying that they were very unhappy about this because they felt it was misrepresenting what went on, and the documentary is meant to say, apparently, is that the aides working for the multiple roles were briefing the press against William and Harry. So in other words, William and Harry were briefing against each other, which apparently was absolutely not true at all. And this has really upset them. And this comes on top of the debacle about the Martin Bashir, which really hasn't been finished yet, and really upset William. So much so that he put out a statement saying he wished it would never be mentioned again, or that indeed anyone would try and recreate it. So there's a lot of unhappiness there. So that is the situation, and I believe that the first. It's a two-part series. The first series goes out tonight, but of course, none of us probably would have heard of it if it wasn't for all this fuss. There's always the problem: the more fuss you make, the more attention is brought to it.
And if you want a fuss, you just throw in the royal family, the BBC, and then a febrile press, and you're off, aren't you?
You certainly are, Simon, but you know that too. I mean, yes, you just anything to do with the royal family, especially the princes, and especially the situation as we know it at the moment. When they're supposedly not speaking, but obviously they have been speaking about this. But I mean, it's all great story for the press, and it takes the public's mind off some of the much more serious things that are going on in the world.
Ingrid, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your time, and I'm sure lots of people will now be watching this evening.
Yeah, we've done our bit to boost it. Ingrid Seward there.
We were talking earlier, a head teacher has asked adults to stop mocking young people by calling them woke for standing up for the things they believe in. Samantha Price is the president of the Girls' School Association. She's urging adults to share the concerns of students regarding issues of racism, sexism and climate change, instead of using the term woke to criticise or demean them.
Well, she adds that times have changed, and instead of shutting down discussions on these topics, older generations need to keep up with the younger generation and their language and concerns.
Well, a few of you have been getting in touch. Robert says, it's a well-known fact, young people, they don't need the voice of experience. There we go. Dave, good morning to you. Consider this thought which I live by. Everyone has the right to express their thoughts, but everyone else has the right not to listen and to refuse to engage. So very little sympathy here for those young people.
Well, yes, leave us alone. Right, that's it from us at the Great British Breakfast. Coming up next, the briefing with Tom Harwood, where he'll be joined by a former Downing Street advisor to discuss whether Boris Johnson has surrounded himself with too many yes men and women.
That's all.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Well, looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking largely dry with plenty of sunshine, although the far north will be cloudier. Let's take a look at the details. The southwest, there we go. We'll continue to see lots of sunshine during the rest of today.